Hello, welcome to the November 7th, 2023 Club Cubase live stream. My name is Greg Undo and I'm the host of the live stream today. If you have not attended a live stream before, how it works is you can ask questions live in the chat field, or simply you can send questions also in advance to clubcubase@steinberg.de. When asking questions, realize that my ability to answer questions in a real-time manner will soon be eclipsed. I will try my best to keep up with all the questions as we go on throughout the live stream. But so if you don't see an immediate response to your question, if we could refrain from asking the same questions over and over again, that would be appreciated. When asking questions, you could specify which version of Cubase you're using, which operating system. So if you're running version 12, version 13, version 11, if you're running Cubase LE, AI, Elements, Artist, or Pro, that information is helpful. We should, several hours after the live stream ends, we should have an index of all the topics discussed in today's live stream pinned to the top of the comments field. And we've covered over 29,000 different topics. So if you want to, refer to different topics that are on the live stream that have been covered in previous live streams, you can go to cubaseindex.com. And we want to thank Jan from Stockholm for creating that website. We have two people that serve as moderators. We want to give special thanks to Agent K and Jazz Dude. They're not Steinberg employees. They really do it for the betterment of the community, so we appreciate that. One other phenomenal resource of information for the Steinberg community is the Cubase Nation Discord, and Jazz Dude does a lot of effort with that, so we'll give special thanks to him for that as well. And once again, my name is Greg Undo. I work for Yamaha Corporation of America and I primarily focus on Steinberg products, and we're the United States distributor of Steinberg products. And I'm presenting from Alexandria, Virginia, just outside Washington, D.C. area. My son is home from school today, so he's sitting in the background. So if we hear a little extra noise, it could be related to him, but we'll hope that he has great behavior. We have today off. The schools are closed today because of election day. So with that, we will go ahead and get started. All right, so let me go to the live chat questions. All right, so we have, and if you're watching this live, please feel free to introduce yourself and tell us where you're from. All right, so we have Home Studio World just saying hi from Jordan, Dr. Iman. I'm glad you can make it. Okay, so we see from Home Studio World says a question. Hi, Greg. How can I drag a chord pattern from the chord pad to the track and play both chord and choose pattern? Okay, so let's come over here and say we want to go to our chord pads here, and we'll activate. And let's say if we want this to be a pattern, I'll come over here. Let's just. So when we drag the chord itself, when we drag it to the event, it's going to be kind of just the typical block chord that we would expect. So when we do this, but if we wanted the pattern, so we don't necessarily drag the pattern out, but what we can do is with the chord pads is just simply come here and if we wanted to record the pattern, I'll just solo this track quickly. And I'll just take it out of loop. Sorry about that. And as I just hit record, so now when we look at the MIDI data, we can see that it is going to basically play the particular patterns for us, kind of broken up like that. So if you want the patterns, just hit record, and the chord data from the patterns will automatically be recorded into the program. All right. So we see another question. Greg, if Steinberg and Cubase 13 link tempo tap with keyboard spacebar, to me it would be better. So I think you can come over here to maybe the default key command, but if you go to, and if you're not familiar, in Cubase 13 there's a new tap tempo. So if we go to your key commands, so we'll go to edit to, not start dictation, sorry about that, edit to key commands, and then we'll search for tap tempo. And I may have just set this a second, but if you go to project to tap tempo, you could do shift. I just did shift plus spacebar. So now when I hold down my shift key and hit the spacebar, because often the spacebar is going to be set for starting and stopping playback. So when we look at my tempo here, I will now tap, holding down the shift plus the spacebar, and then we could just capture the tempo feel directly like so. So at that point, you could just do, use the spacebar with the modifier key. So you could set that. And I think it may be designed for shift plus spacebar. And I use that to toggle preferences in previous versions, but if not, you could set that pretty quickly. So once again, go to your key commands and search for tap tempo. And you could just make sure that this is off, otherwise it's searching for keyboard shortcuts. So we'll say under project tap tempo and assign shift plus spacebar or another modifier to do that. All right, Sven Isaacson asks, is there a way to close down / delete all insert plugins on a specific channel in one go? It quickly becomes tedious to have to select no effect 10 times. Okay, so let's say if we come here and we have multiple inserts on a particular track. All right, so let's say we have multiple inserts and I don't want to get rid of all of these inserts from this particular track. And let's say I have it panned left and I have my volume down. So I think if we go right here to the Inserts tab and hold down, I think it's Command or Control, that we could reset the channel. So we'll just come here, reset, and we'll see, I don't think that the panning or volume will change, but we can now just reset all the insert slots all in one fell swoop without having to do it individually. So once again, you'll see just this little icon, hold down where you see the Inserts tab. Hold down the Command or Control key, so if you're Mac or PC, and just click, and then you could reset all the channels like so. All right, so we see, hi Greg, how to do a slide note or 808 kick in the piano roll. So a lot of times people will use something, a lot of times the slide note can be determined by pitch bend, but a lot of times when you're doing it, it's actually the instrument itself. So let's say if I want it to, we'll just open up a different project here, and like if we want to do it in the sampler track, so it's often how the particular instrument will respond to that, and the sampler track kind of has this built in. So let's come over, I think I have a project set up to show this. Let's see if I still have it. See if it's in here. Oh, here we go. This is what I was looking for. Okay, so now we'll just open up this project. So let's say I have kind of like an 808 type of sound. So let's say I will just listen to this particular track here. So let's say I have that as my glide. So if we wanted to now come over, let's just go to our sampler track. So go to my sampler control, we can drag this file in. And then when we go to pitch, we could activate, so we'll come over here, let's go to your pitch, and then you'll have your glide setting. So now at this point, we can just go over here. And we can put it into kind of a monophonic mode. So once we do this, we'll just say, okay, put this in monophonic mode. So it's not necessarily, some people will do pitch bend to get between the two notes, but it's often kind of like a glide function that's used. And if we put this into legato mode, so we can come here, we can put this in legato mode, and as we do this, and we could change the rate of the glide. So if you want it to be very kind of long, or if you want it to be short on the glide. So in monophonic mode, we can actually just kind of do. So as we hold one note down, we can continue the sample and play different pitches from the MIDI keyboard like so. So it's generally not a MIDI key editor function. Some people will mimic it with doing pitch bend or portamento if the instrument supports it. Not a lot of them do. But you know, often it's going to be kind of a manipulation in gliding within the instrument itself. And once you have that set up, then I think you'll be all set. All right, so we see Stefan from Sweden. Thanks for joining us. And we have Aram saying hello to everyone. His question is, I'm trying to export Cubase 12 key commands and Profile Manager and import it into Cubase 13, but in Cubase 13 I can't find this saved file to import. Can you please explain the way it needs to be done? All right, so you know, if you're in Cubase 12 and you go to your key commands and you come over, and this is a slightly different window, but if you save it as a preset in Cubase 12, it should automatically show up in Cubase 13. A lot of people may modify the key commands but not save it as a preset. Once it's saved as a preset, that could be migrated over. But if you want to take over other elements, what you could do is go to your edit menu and go to Profile Manager. So if we're here, we can say, okay, I want to do a new profile. So we'll say this is Cubase 13 M1 MacBook, and we save this. So we'll say let's export, and here we're going to choose a particular location. So once we export our profile from Cubase 12, we can then just simply come over. So I'm going to put this onto my desktop. So we'll go to desktop. All right, so we have that, and we'll close. Now when I want to load up that particular profile, I go to Edit, to Profile Manager in Cubase 13, and then we could say Import, and you'll just go to wherever the file path where you saved it before, and you'll see it's here, it's a .srf file, and that will be your Cubase 13 M1 MacBook Pro. So that's my profile. So you'll tell the computer where to export the profile to and where to import it from. All right, so we have Jovanovic 3D, just checking in from Slovenia. Thanks for joining us today. All right, so we have from Alexander Plasko. Glad you could make it to today's live stream. So his question is there a way to select playing chord, pattern, and section simultaneously and switch to different selections on the fly via quick controls? So I think there's different, plugins that will allow you to do that. Let me just jump back. So if you wanted to trigger, different phrases, even utilizing, people utilize Groove Agent for that. But I think once we come to a particular score, we will come over, and I think we can maybe have two playing at once. Let me just check. So we'll say we'll have our Rhodes here, and I'll go to my chord pads, and let's all right, and let's see. Let me just add. So I think it's going to be more, set up for, let me just come over here and switch the sound quickly. So, I think it's going to be more, set up for, like, as we do one particular instrument, that this would be, the chord pads are outputting the MIDI data to different, to different tracks. So let's say if we come here to the Rhodes, and maybe on this one, I want it, we'll go send it to the synth bass. Let me just knock this up. And let's say if I put this to plain here, and if I come here, we'll see, and I'll just take this volume down. So I think it's going to be global. So I think it's kind of globally sent out from the chord pads into, where it's not going to be set up. But, there's a number of different arpeggiators and different phrase sequencers that you could use as MIDI plugins to do that. So, or even Groove Agent is done with that. It could be used for that. All right. All right, so you see, hi Greg, hope you're doing well. In Cubase 12 Pro, how can I have a delay effect that gets triggered on a specific synth chord or note? Thanks. So let's say if I wanted to come over, I'll just switch this back to playing chords. So let's say I'll come here, we'll just record some. So we'll just have some chords. So if we wanted to, come over, there's a MIDI plugin, and this will look, basically the same. And you'll have kind of the same functions, but we'll go to like a MIDI insert. So we could now just come over here and say we want to go to a MIDI echo plugin. So the GUI will be slightly different in version 13, but let's say I wanted to do different repeats, and I don't want to do a pitch offset. So while this plays, I can say, okay, I want repeats to be, maybe 8 repeats. I want it to be, let's make it 8th note triplets. And now we could just kind of come over, and as we play, so, if you don't want to manually cut, consider using the MIDI inserts, and maybe the MIDI echo plugin would be a quick, creative way to be able to do repeats like that. All right, so we see Uno Memento. Hi from Finland. Is Cubase 13 more resource hungry than Cubase 12? So I found it to be a little CPU, a little more CPU friendly, so less CPU intensive. And I think a lot of other people have as well, but it could depend upon your system. But I don't think there's any significant increase, in any way. So I think if anything, it gets a little more efficient over time. All right, wonderful to see Peter checking in from Montreal. All right, so we see from the Creative Way, it says any Studio One folks who have been looking at Cubase in the chat. So a lot of people just simply bought Cubase from Studio One. All right. So we see from Uno Memento, does Cubase 13 work on Windows 10? Yes, so no problems. I think there's a, you might have to have a certain level of Windows 10, but I know on my personal computer it's working phenomenally well. Okay, so we see Jovanovic 3D asks, question, how to keep filtered selection of sounds in Hallion. When I close Hallion, it resets filter back to all sounds, and then I have to search again for specific sounds. So let's say when we come over, let's say if we're searching for sounds, I think it's maybe like in MediaBay. So let's say we go to Hallion. All right, so let's say we're looking for a single instrument here. All right, so let's say I want it to be like bass, synth bass. All right, so let's say I'm looking for that. So let's say I closed a window. Oops, sorry. Just open this up again. So, and I see that bass, synth bass is automatically still checked from when I closed it. Let me make sure I'm understanding how to keep filtered section of sounds in Hallion 7. When I close Hallion 7, it resets filter to all sounds, and then I have to search again for specific sounds. So it looked like it automatically did that and kept my selection until I cleared it. So, if we wanted to come over here, we could clear all the filter settings when we hit X, but it looks like it automatically retained the filter choices but let me know if those are the filters that you're looking for. All right, Jam Tracks Reunion asks, on Cubase 13, is there a way to solo the effects channels by themselves? I cannot do it no matter what I try. Cubase always solos the tracks I have sending to that effects as well. Is this a bug? So I think, if we want to isolate this specific track, so let's say I have this vocal going to this reverb. So just come over here. So let's say we have the vocal going. I'll just add. So what we could do in the mix console is, when we utilize the control room, so we want to go to your audio connections, make sure you have the control room activated, make sure that we have the outputs configured here, but we want to have them chosen not connected. So when we go to our mix console view, we'll just come over at this point, and let's say when we have our reverb, losing sight my place. So we go to solo the reverb, that what dimension it solos the original source. So what you need to do is, once you have the control room activated, click on the L button, and now we're only hearing the particular reverb in the end. So, and you may have to just come over here, and on the listen mode, there's some in the end. And then that's how you could isolate just the reverb. So you don't solo it, you send the reverb to the effects, to the listen bus, and then you could isolate the reverb that way. All right, so we see Ted Springman just says up and running on Lucky 13. So that's great. Glad you're able to upgrade. All right. All right, so we have the artist known as Love saying hello to everyone. He sees that everyone's getting started early today. So, all right, so we have Jan in Stockholm from CubaseIndex.com. Thanks for joining us today. All right, wonderful to see Taylor from Music for World Peace Records from Pine Grove, Pennsylvania. All right, so we see a question from Music for World Peace Records. Is it possible to vary bend samples with a single Groove Agent SE pad using the scroll wheel? So I'm not sure if we could do it using kind of the scroll wheel, but if you wanted to do like, bending the pitch. So we'll come over, let me just, we'll go to this drum kit here. And let's open it up the interface. So I'm just going to take one of the vocal files here that we had, and let me just drag this to the audio file here. So if we play this now,
I started losing sight my place.
So if we wanted to go to the pitch tab at this point, one of the things that you could do is just kind of come over here and do a pitch envelope, and we could say let's go to the envelope amount.
Losing sight my place.
So if we wanted to kind of just have this automatically stretch out, and I'll just adjust my envelope amount here.
I started losing sight my place.
So if I wanted to put another envelope point,
I started losing sight my place.
And let's make the envelope just a
I
little.
started losing sight my place.
So you could do all sorts of different kind of pitch envelope settings, just like this.
I started losing sight my place.
So let me know if that's kind of what you want to accomplish, Taylor. All right, so we see Taylor also asks question. On plugins and fader, does 0.1 represent 1 dB or 0.1 dB? So I believe, depending on the value that you're working with, if it's going to be for volume, it would be 0.1 or 1/10 dB. All right, so we see Taylor also has a feature request, have multiple favorite level buttons in the control room. So I'm not sure if it's, maybe if you could clarify if you want it to have, we have kind of a default level here where we could say this is our reference, our monitor reference point. So if I come here, we can hold down, I think it's Alt, and then we could just immediately jump to let's say our known reference. So we have our reference level here. So if we come, we can now immediately go from here to there. So there may be ways of assigning different reference points. So there's kind of two different levels. Let me know if you need to have like multiple reference points like that, Taylor, to be recalled as presets, and I could pass it along as a feature request. All right, so we have Thomas just saying hello to everybody. All right, so we have artist known as Love just says, thank you for everything, Greg. Everyone, please hit the like button, and that allows us to continue doing the live streams and offering this as a service. All right, wonderful to see Sable Winters on the live stream, and Ash Rebel Hen Studios checking in from Australia saying Cubase 13. Oh yeah, it seems excited. All right, so Black Lung asks, is there a way to turn down the brightness of the fonts? The white fonts are too bright, very hard on people with visual accessibility issues. Some of us can't use the new update because of this. So, I have vision issues myself. And, there's a lot of attention paid to detail on contrast so that, like they've gone through very specifically to make sure that the contrast was more obvious for people with visual issues. So, that's why you see it kind of brighter to stand out from the particular text, or the background on that. So to me, it seemed really bright at first. Now, when I go back to Cubase 12 after working in Cubase 13 for a while, Cubase 12 just seems a bit dark and harder to read. So, they actually go through the entire program and figure out what is the best contrast for easier readability, very detailed. So I kind of asked a similar question in another area, and the developer actually walked through with me and said, oh, the contrast here is this, but you say it's not as easy to read, but, and they had, very specific analysis tools for that. But I'll pass along your comment regardless. All right, wonderful to see Walter Blackledge checking in from Club Cubase in St. Louis. Hope you're doing well. It's great to see you back on. All right, we see Jason Sykes from South Shields, England. Glad you could make it today. All right, so we have Hunter Music Greece, Vasilis from Greece. It says Cubase forever. All right. We see Spike Williams checking in from Rhondda, Wales. And we have Ableton Live Producer checking in from Ireland. Thanks for being on the live stream. All right, and we have Claudius from the Magdalene Islands. All right, the Creative Wave is from Orlando. All right, and we have PC from Edinburgh, Scotland. Hope I said that right. All right, so we see Martin just saying he did a Cubase 13 upgrade last Friday with no problems on Windows 10 workstations. All right, so we see question, how to organize plugins in Cubase, i.e. I'd like all my reverbs to be in one folder with... So what we could do is if we go to your studio menu, you'll see VST Plugin Manager. Here we'll see this little plus sign, and this will be kind of a new collection. So we'll call this a VST plugin collection. So I'm going to say empty. And at this point, we'll give it a name. So we'll call this November 7th, 2023. And I can come over here. We'll click on folder. We'll say reverb. And then all we have to do is take all of your files that you want. So it's like I want this, and I'm going to drag it into my reverb folder. I could just expand, and I want RoomWorks, and I want, reverence. So at this point, we can just kind of drag these into the folder, and you could organize your plugins however you see fit. Be aware that, if you have a plugin collection and then you install new plugins, like, I don't see my plugins, you may have to just simply go back to default and see the plugins there and drag them over into your plugin collection. So just be aware of that. But you can go to your studio menu to VST Plugin Manager, click here, create you could copy it, or you could create an empty one, click on the folder, and then you can organize your plugins to your heart's content. All right, so we see Peter Schneider saying hi from Bavaria, Germany. Congrats for a great Cubase 13 release. Thanks. I'll make sure to pass that along to the team. I know they worked very hard on it. All right, so we see David Griffiths. Hi, Greg, friends from Chile, Wales. Glad you can make it today. And we have Braxel checking in from Texas, I believe. And we have Augie from New York City. All right, so we see Simon asks, Hi Greg, could you walk us through the steps needed to use the new replace audio and video export feature? And is it possible to only export the locator range like we could do with the old video export? So currently when we want to, when we're working with video, one of the things that was brought back, and this was kind of the early way, was, people wanted to be able to, take the video file that they got and they wanted to be able to, basically take their composition and put it into the particular file. Now, when we replace audio in the video file, so now we'll go here first. So we'll say we'll go to export video. Now there's two different options that have been added. One of the options, what's been in since I think 10.5, is replace audio and video file. And this could be used when the actual video file itself is kind of let's say we have a large file and we're only working on this one particular section. At this point we could export, and it won't export the contents of the video. It's going to generate a new file based upon the locators. The replace audio in video is taking the original length from the particular video file, and it will not take into account the left and right locators. So basically what the replace audio and video file is it's going to take this video file. Again, it's going to take the entire video file in length, and at that point we'll create a new video file, but it's not going to truncate the video based on locators because it's using kind of the same information from the original. And this export could be a much smaller size. Now, one of the other things that was introduced in Cubase 13 is the ability to have track versions for video. So sometimes what people will do is have one track version that's maybe that they're composing to, where they need to see like a lot of details in the video. They may have the full resolution file. They may just go to a video editor or conversion and come over here, take the same video file, and when they export, they could load kind of a lower resolution into a smaller video size, load that as a new version, and then when they go to export the video, they could just simply export, create a new video file based on this. They could do a replace audio, but based upon the actual length of the video. So if you want to do kind of a low res version to work with the video and a high res, you could do that and export it and truncate. Or if you wanted to just simply export the entire file, if you've done video edits in a video editor, you can then load that up as a separate track version. So generally the replace audio and video file will give you a smaller size, but you don't have the flexibility of truncating it to the left and right locators. All right. All right, so we have John Barry checking in from the English Riviera. Thanks for joining us, John. All right. So we see from Mayron, just says, hi Greg, is Steinberg going to do anything soon for this horrible graphic bug in Cubase 13? So if you, I'm not sure which horrible graphic bug you're referring to. So if there's something specific, I know that some of the graphics were changed. Sometimes, if you're on Windows, check your Windows scaling. But, the graphics engines have changed to be, overall more consistent. But let me know if there's a specific bug or if it's the design you don't like. All right, so I see from Patrizio, can you start one octave up, Greg? So I'm not sure if that's maybe from somewhere, some other comment. Maybe if you could share, Patrizio, so I have a little more context with that. All right, so we have Club Debris checking in from Rio, Brazil. My brother just got back from Rio. He was there for a medical conference. It's the first time there. He really enjoyed it. All right, so we see from John Costigan, just says, congratulations, Greg. Thanks, Jazzy, to H&K, Mike Teams, Jan, and the whole Cubase family. So I think that congratulations, you know, I'll pass on my congratulations to the Steinberg team for all their hard work. All right. So we see from Nick Keller, hi Greg, is it possible to edit the CC data at the same time for two separate MIDI parts at the same time? Is it possible to edit CC data at the same for two separate MIDI parts at the same time? For example, if I want to select two notes and change velocity modulation on two parts at once. So I think that this may function the same way. So I'll duplicate this track and let me just change these notes slightly. So move those down an octave and let's look at these. Okay, so I think, you know, when we want to do this, so, you know, we could select, let's just come over here and we'll do all parts. So let's say if we select all these parts, let's go to, let's say our modulation, and let's put in, all right, so we'll get to our modulation here. So I think that these may, so let me just try doing it now. I have both those underlined. Yeah, so, but, you know, one of the things that you could do if they're the same parts, let's see if we come over here and let's group these events. So I just did that, and they're grouped. Let me ungroup them. So Control or Command G for group. Yeah, so the CC data is still going to be kind of tied to the parts. So I mean, you can copy and paste, but there, you know, and there could be a lot of unintended consequences of changing in one and then having all other selected parts change. So I think that's kind of the design intention with that, but I'll pass it along as kind of something that people want. All right, so we see from Hunter Music, have detect tempo. So, you know, if you wanted to come over, you know, to tempo detection of MIDI, really all you had to do, so if that's what you're looking for, is if you just go to your project, you can select for MIDI tracks or audio tracks, you can do tempo detection right there from the project menu. But let me know if I'm misunderstanding the question. Okay, so we have a question. How can I enable previewing audio when on VariAudio mode? Okay, so let me just jump to this project here. Okay, so if we want to make sure that it is enabled so that we hear the particular changes, we can now come over here. Let's say we go to our VariAudio. Okay, so you'll see like this little speaker icon. So as I move notes, we may not hear it, but when you see this acoustic feedback, so make sure that you have the acoustic feedback enabled right there. And then you should be able to hear it. With that turned off, you don't hear the changes as you're making adjustments in MediaBay, but with that turned on, you can hear those changes as you're making them in preview mode. So let me know if that's helpful. All right, so we have a question, preset browser, how to resize it at free will because some of them show up very small. So let's just come over here. Let's get to like, let's load a track preset. So I think if we, so this I think may be a fixed size, but if we go to MediaBay, all of your different functions in MediaBay can be kind of resized like so. So maybe, some of these will be fixed so that all, they don't want to necessarily be where as you go to load up presets for different things that it's, the filters are hidden automatically because of sizing. So. Okay, so Rob German asks, is there a way in chord pads with the pattern selected and the chord pads just to drag a chord with the pattern to a track? So I think it's going to be the chord itself is dragged, and you would need to we'll just come here. I think I still have it. So we'll get to the chord pads here. So this would need to be recorded. So it's like we have, I drag this to the Rhodes part, it's going to just do kind of a block chord. But if we play the particular pattern, that we can now come over and as we just record,
I started losing sight my place.
So while we're in record, then those particular chord patterns will be recorded. But the chord pad is just doing, we can think of this as kind of more of the performance mode with that. And I don't think we can do like step entry on the particular parts there. So you just will record it, or you could just simply, play the particular MIDI notes that trigger the patterns and program those in. All right, wonderful to see Benny from Sweden and Razel from Denmark. We have DL White just saying hello to everyone. Thanks for joining us today. Okay, so we see Ted Springman ask, says, hi Greg, post analyze and set definition to tempo. If I want to lock a performance to one tempo, is there anything wrong with simply deleting all the tempo points except the first one? That's my habit, so that will work. But it may, if the first one isn't the particular value that you want, so say if I do a tempo detection on this, So let's say we'll take this particular file and do a quick tempo detection on it. So we see that this isn't aligning to the tempo. So probably the best way to do it, to make sure that all of the, depending on a material, if it is fluctuating in tempo, Ted, is just to kind of come over here and we'll do our tempo detection. So we'll get a project menu to tempo detection. If we wanted this to play, so we can see that now we're going to have all right, so we have our tempo map here, and what I want to do now is figure out, say, okay, this is where our downbeat is, right here. So I can go to my signature track and drop that in. So what you need to do if you wanted this to play back a steady tempo is just come over here and you want to select a file, go to audio, to advanced, so I'm sorry, let me just and then we will choose set definition from tempo. Now once we've done that, all of the tempo changes for the particular file are kind of embedded as metadata in the file themselves. So as we look at this, now if I take the tempo map off, so I come here and we'll just say, let's make this a perfect, I want this to be 160 beats a minute. And have it be perfectly steady. If you erase the data without doing, if you don't do the advanced and set definition from tempo, then all of the other tracks will play, but are not necessarily locked to the particular tempo. So again, do the tempo detection, audio to advanced, set the definition, and then Cubase knows when the file is speeding up and slowing down, so when you put it to a steady tempo, it will stay and speed up and slow down the audio to be playing back at the steady tempo. All right. All right, so Omar Diaz, Pianista, asks, hi Greg, for mastering, do I put the brick wall limiter on the first slot of the master bus or the last of the chain? So generally when people are doing mastering, if you're doing it kind of within Cubase, generally people will put it kind of post fader. So, you may still have plugins after, but, most of the times it's going to be later in the chain because you may have other processes and you don't want to necessarily affect the gain structure of other processes on the master section. So you could do it so I would do it, very similar to that. And I would tend to put it later in the effects processing chain on the master bus. All right, so we see Patrick. All right, so I say Mayron just says really annoying. It's the first time upgrade immediately. Just back to Cubase 12. Cubase 13 is unusable on his system. So I did see. I would really kind of check out some of the display. If with this, I saw that maybe there's a post previously to like the graphics glitch, but I can assure you it doesn't work on every system. But check out. You know, if you want to send me like a screenshot of what's going on in your system, we could investigate further. So if you want to send it to clubcubase@steinberg.de, be happy to take a look at it and investigate it for you. All right, so Patrick Manuel A asks, Greg, on new key editor, how to copy, paste, or transfer MIDI to multiple instruments at the same time. All right, so let's... So I'll just add some instrument tracks here. All right, so say if I'm here, okay, so I want to select all of these notes, we'll copy, and let's go ahead and just do it in the multiple key editor here. And then I think it's still really, you know, from here, I'll just move my cursor back, but here I'll just, so now I just kind of paste it into multiple editors because we could see if you have your track, you know, your tracks shown here, you could just kind of select your tracks and paste and navigate down to different tracks to, you know, quickly paste between our different notes. So let's say again, if I'm here, and I'll just put my, say I'll move these all to the start. So we're here, I have these 4 parts selected, so I want to copy, and then we could just come here, paste, 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 you know, so, and I just have my cursor in a different spot. So now we just pasted that data into all of the different events because you could just select the events from within the key editor, so it speeds up the process. All right, so we see a question, can a song, a Cubase song on PC run on Mac? So certainly you can go back and forth between the different versions. So okay, so we see a question from MH Beats, why old Chord presets gone, Cubase 13 chord pads? So I think that there's new chord presets that are in Cubase 13, but you could save them from Cubase 12 and have those load into Cubase 13. All right, so Patrick Vanderbilt A asks, Greg, is there any new functionality in MIDI effects in ARP sequencer and MIDI echo Cubase 13? So I think that the functionality would be the same. One thing that people had complained about was the ability to quickly navigate between different presets using the mouse scroll wheel. So that feature was re-implemented, and again, new kind of overall modernized user interface, but I think the functionality would be the same. But I think one of the main functional differences is being able to scroll between different presets using the scroll wheel that people had asked for. We have Linas checking in from Lithuania. Thanks for joining us today and being on the live stream. All right, so we see Harry Olives just says, did anyone notice YouTube is constantly reducing the 1080p bitrate? There's so many streams you cannot read any of the drop-down menus or the title bars. Seems YouTube wants to push people into a premium account. So I think that, you know, when you're, when you go back and watch it afterwards, but I think it really depends, you know, the resolution that you're getting, and you could set it in the YouTube player. Could be dependent upon your particular bandwidth or your speed. I know that's how it used to be, that, you know, so you may have to manually set that, but it's kind of, I know in the past that YouTube would change kind of the streaming quality based upon your connection speed. So it could be something as innocuous as that. Okay, so we see from Cycling is Awesome. Hi, Greg. LCC Learning doesn't work with Pad Shop or Behringer Poly D as hardware. What can I do? So I'm not sure what LCC Learning is. So if you have, let's say, a Pad Shop instance. So I know a lot of times we can, okay, maybe it's LCC is Learn CC. So let's say if I come over here and I just have, let me see if I get this hooked up. Let me have a power cable disconnected. All right, let me just, okay. Oh. So let's say we want to learn a particular MIDI, like learn the CC. So I'm going to come over here, click on Learn CC, and I just move it like so. And I'm just doing this from my Nectar controller. So now that's automatically controlling it. So one thing you could do if it's, you know, with your, let me get the right keyboard. With your Behringer Poly Ds, one is make sure that it's actually transmitting MIDI CC. So if you come here to the MIDI monitor, like as we move a knob, make sure you can see what actual information is. So it may be transmitting, you know, pitch bend. It may be transmitting a MIDI system common message. So make sure that it's actually transmitting a MIDI CC value. So I move this, it's controller 40, this is 41, 42, 43, etc. So, you know, but see what actual MIDI information is being transmitted. But it looks like, you know, the learning from, you know, this particular keyboard, if it's going to be sysx data, you know, if that's how it's working. Sometimes the knobs are only designed to work internally and not as an external controller. So you could see that by going to the MIDI monitor plugin and see what goes on there. All right, so we see from Ed Rugman. Hi, Greg. Hi from the UK. Do the new Pultec EQ plugins model the circuit behavior and harmonics, or are they digitally clean? So I'm not sure the exact process that they did with it, and I haven't like compared it to a real Pultec. I just don't happen to have one. But it seems like a lot of people are really liking the, you know, the new Pultec EQs, Pultec style EQs that come with Cubase 13. So, you know, play around with it and see what you think. Okay, so we see Greg, can you enlarge your highlight pointer so I can follow it? So sorry, due to my low vision. All right, so I'll move. Let's see if I can do that quickly here. I'll see if I could do that. I will just find it, see where it is. say maybe under pointer control. So let's see if we can. Let's see if we could enlarge it here. All right, let me see if doesn't look like it got bigger, but all right, maybe it's under here. Pointer size. All right, so let me know if that works better. All right, sorry about that. Okay, all right, so we see from Ed Rugman question, is there any way to access the Steinberg plugins externally to Cubase? I'm just curious to look at plugins like the Pultec in a tool such as Plugin Doctor. My guess is they are proprietary and hidden. So I believe that they are proprietary, so I'm not sure if they're going to be accessible outside of Cubase. And I think most DAWs have plugins like that. All right, so we see a question from Fish Torch. I'm finding if I save a template with MIDI inputs assigned to channels, when I reload a template, it reverts the channel input to any. Is this how it's supposed to be? Cubase 13. So let me know. So, generally if you wanted to channelize the incoming MIDI channel, you would need to use like an input transformer for that. So as soon as we go to a particular MIDI track, make sure that you're actually using, the input transformer for that, and that way you could actually see exactly, what is going on. So, but it's always going to be channelized to any channel that's coming out of your particular controller, but use the input transformer, and then that could just simply come over and channelize the MIDI, and that's just how Cubase is by default, so that all the MIDI can be captured regardless of what MIDI channel the controller is spitting out. All right, sorry, sorry, let me just, my chat field jumped on me. So I have lots of questions in my future. All right, so we see from Ted Springman, hi Greg, the new envelope tools did a trick for me in 13. If they're not in fact looping envelopes, might please make that a future release question and have them reference the Moog sub 37 as a model. So, it could depend on, the envelopes, and this is if you haven't played around. Let me just clear my throat. If you haven't played around with them in the sampler track, so we could come over here, let's just jump back here. So now if we go into the different filters, but if we wanted to, so let's say as we're kind of working with this, we have, we could set this up for, to loop automatically. So if you wanted to, so you could set kind of your loop points there. And, as you want to kind of paint in different modes. So, they could work in conjunction with, different sample loop points as well. So they're incredibly flexible with that, but I'm glad you found that feature helpful. A lot of time and effort went into that. All right, so we see Beltram just says, hi from Sweden, really like the new release. That's great. Okay, so we see from Ash Rebel Hen Studios in Brisbane. Hi, Greg. Happy birthday the other day. So thank you very much. I had a wonderful, relaxing. My birthday was on Sunday, so thank you for that. His question is, when using Iconica Sketch in a piano roll, how can I instruct the notes to change from, let's say, staccato to legato by mouse input? So if we have an Iconica Sketch instrument, which is one of the new instruments within Cubase, we'll come over here. I'll just add quick instrument track. We'll come here to Hallian Sonic. We'll go to Iconica Sketch. This is a brand new orchestral library. So let's say we'll load up cello. All right, so say I'll just sequence in some. All right, so we've now recorded something and we want, so once we're in the MIDI editor, we'll see the expression map, and since it's a Hallian based instrument, we can now come over here, and when we see the expression map, we'll choose to import the key switches. So once we've done that, we can select in our controller lane. We will just come over and say, let's look at our articulations and dynamics. I'll make this just a little larger so it's easier to see. So as we want to do this from the mouse, we could also just come right over here and say, okay, I want this to be staccato. I want these particular notes to be spiccato. And let's say legato. So we could just kind of come over here and switch between our different articulations. And I want this to be pits back to spiccato. So as we do this now, and that's how you could switch without having to, worry about creating expression maps, because if it's an Hallian instrument, it's automatically kind of extracted for you. All right, wonderful to see David Glick on. Glad you can make the live stream. Hope you're doing well. We'll have to get together for lunch soon. I'll give you a call. Maybe we could do it over the weekend. Okay, so we see, hey Greg, can you explain how can I change intensity on a selected track? Okay, so let's say we have this level of intensity, so let's go take a look at it, see if it's adjustable. I know that we didn't want it to necessarily be more intense to make the contrast with the naming, but let's go take a look and see if it's adjustable in preferences. So I'm not sure if it's maybe selection brightness. Let's see if that does it. Yeah, so you could just come over here and selection brightness. So go to your preferences, to user interface, track and mix console channel colors, and then you could come over here so you could see how when it's brighter with the text that it could be harder to read. So let's come over here. So you can see that could be hard to read. Just come and adjust, hit apply, and then you could adjust. I'll just go back to default values. So we see Linus ask, hey Greg, do you need internet for Cubase 13 to run? Cubase 12 works, Cubase 13 doesn't. No, once it's activated, once it is activated, then you will not need Cubase 13 to run. So. All right, so we see Soren from Sweden says, Greg, Cubase 13, can you show a bit about the MIDI insert quarter, specifically how to mix major and minor to different single key pressing? I think not possible. So, Soren, I think you're planning your release for your new record on the 3rd, so I hope everything feels released. Congratulations on that. And it's a big undertaking, but let's take a quick look at, see if we do our quarter on this particular track. Don't work with a quarter too much, but we'll see if we can get it sorted out. All right, so let's let me just load up a quick preset here. Oh, didn't like that. Try this again. I haven't worked with a quarter plugin that much myself, so. Okay, so now let's say so say we go to this note here, let's edit chords, and I want it to be so I'll play around with this some more, Soren, and I showed on Friday, just so I could show it correctly. I haven't worked with new interface on it, and I'm not a quarter expert, but I'll play around with it and see if I can get it sorted out for you on Friday's live stream. All right, so we see question. Hello, Greg. In the last video, you showed the use of pads when selecting the pattern. You selected guitar, bossa, something. I tried that, but I'm not getting any pattern, even if the guitar was selected. So, you know, it could be depending upon when we have the chord track active. And some of these presets are only with Cubase 13. So when we come here, we'll choose pattern. And now in Cubase 12, I think you had guitar pattern and plain pattern, but Cubase 13 has added more guitar. So if I wanted to just come over here, so you could do stuff like that. So make sure that you're in Cubase 13, and then you'll see more of the different patterns that are available here. So, and there's also factory presets that you could access to. All right, wonderful to see David M. from Liverpool on. All right, so a question. Hello, is it possible to apply a MIDI insert like Apache only on a part of your instrument track? Okay, so let's say I will I'll just drag some of the chords out here. Just turn my snap on. All right, so let's say we have just our chords here. All right, so let me see if I have, let's say we have the arpeggiator on. So let's come here. And I'll just make this more eighth note bass, so it's a little more. So let's see if we select just one of the events. I'm not sure this may be totally for the pattern, but let's see if we come here to freeze MIDI modifier. It's going to do it to all of the events on the particular track. So try to think if there's, so let's see if we do a new track version. Instead of that, let's delete this version. I'm going to duplicate this version. And let's say I want it only on this particular measure, the arpeggiator. Let's do our freeze emitted modifiers on that. I will make kind of a new version, and let's say I want to take these events, just hold down Control Command, select. I'm going to copy. Let's go to our new version, paste, and I can paste at origin, which is Alt or Option plus V. Let's go to version 2, where I have the arpeggiator. I'm going to copy. Let's go to our new comp version and hold down Alt or Option plus V. And now we will bypass, take the plugin off. We'll have just the chords on the first two measures. And now we could have I know it's kind of not the most straightforward process, but you could do it that way, kind of editing between different track versions if needed. So. All right, so we see from Taylor, it says, my first question was blend, not bend. Maybe Taylor, if you could ask the whole question in context. Sorry if I misread it. But so I don't have to scroll back like 400 comments to find it. But if you could ask again, we should be able to catch it in time for the rest of the live stream. All right, so we see David M. just says, hi, Greg. I'm missing the X to exit in Cubase 13. It's a very minor issue. All seems to be stable. So, since we're kind of doing the, Windows compliant multi-window support, you could close all of the windows in Cubase, all the project windows, and not see the X to exit out. Where you could find it, David, is if you come here and you'll see it on the hub, you'll then see a quit Cubase. So that will exit out of the program for you. And it's just kind of because all the windows and kind of Windows compliant multi-window handling, all the project windows can be closed. So when that happens, then you could quit Cubase from the hub, which will immediately become visible for you. All right, so we see Taylor just says the feature request was for multiple reference level buttons. Okay, I'll pass that along as a feature request. Thanks for the clarification. Okay, so we see kind of a clarification from Taylor on the Groove Agent question. He has further clarification on my first question. Blending multiple layered samples in Groove Agent. Groove Agent SE changed the blend amount with small mouse wheel. So if they are what you can do, so let's say if I come over here, let's get to the instrument track. We'll just do Groove Agent SE. And let me just go to my MediaBay here real quick. I think we can find these. Okay, so let's say I have multiple snares here. I'll drag these to one pad. Okay, so let me reread the question. So blending multiple layered samples and groove agent to change the blend amount with the scroll wheel. So, you know, one of the things that you could do here if you wanted to adjust kind of the velocity is, you know, just kind of drag. You know, this will evenly split the velocity, but let's say if we're blending these, like if we're layering these different sounds together, so let's say if we wanted to select this particular, let's see if we go to different layers, yeah, those are all. So I think what you have to do, like if you wanted to adjust the volume between different sampled layers, is just going into like the sample editor, and there is just an overall gain. And I think that if we adjust the gain on this layer, let's see if we adjust it on the sample. Looks like it's global there. So let me know if you want to be able to, when you have multiple, but I think that there is a way to adjust, if you wanted to adjust the level of each of the sounds here, but you could do like some sample editing directly on the particular samples themselves. So if we wanted to come here, I think if we go to slice, that you might be able to, looks like those are all kind of set the same, but just to make so I understand, Taylor, that you want to be able to, if you had like 8 snare samples, if you wanted to blend or change the dynamics between each of those, just so I could understand better. Okay, so we see John just says, "Hi Greg, I wanted to thank you for helping me with mastering. I had an issue with exporting then my PC was taking too long to export, so glad I was able to help." All right, so we have Ty Black just checking in from Boston, Massachusetts. So actually going to be in Boston next Monday night doing a demo at Berkeley. Thanks for joining us. All right, so we see, I wish they made this upgrade more 4K and bigger monitor friendly with bigger fonts and easier to handle automation points and clip corners. So, you know, if you're running a, 4K display, it, will be small, and that's kind of the choice you make running a 4K display. But, if you're on the Windows platform, if you go to your Cubase preferences, you'll see under general, you'll have, you could try to disable high DPI, and this could depend upon your video display. I assume if you're running a high DPI resolution, if you have a 4K screen, but there's also different scaling options for the program. So make sure that you play around with the different scaling options inside of Cubase that could function independently of your Windows scaling. All right, so you see from John, just says he suggested to spread the plugins to several output groups, and the track was taking a minute 30 to export, took 14 seconds to export. All right, well, thanks for letting me know. Glad it was helpful. All right, so we have Corey Levine says, "Greetings from Nashville, Greg. Thanks for being here for us. Always glad to help. And thanks for being on the live stream." All right, so wonderful to see Michael Teams from Weatherford, Texas. I believe the virtual ice cream distribution will begin. All right, so we see Kerwin Young just saying hi to the Cubase Nation. He's glad to be back after a lengthy road trip, and Cubase 13 is solid. That's great. Kerwin is an esteemed member of the Cubase community. All right, John Barry asks, hi Greg, could you pass on a feature request for the global bypass buttons at the top of the mixer for inserts, EQs, channel strip and sends remain illuminated when active. Currently they are only momentary. Thanks. All right, so let's say if we add a number of audio tracks here, and we go into our full screen mix console that we see, and we'll just go to make sure our channel states are active. Okay. Okay, so state buttons here are active. All right, so now when we come here and bypass, so you want those to be illuminated when, okay, I'll pass that along as a feature set, as a feature request. I'm not sure, sometimes it might be annoying visually, but I can see where it could be clearer, but I'll pass that along. John, thanks for the suggestion. All right, so we have Jim Burridge checking in from Devon, England. Or go to your audio connections, let us know if you're using the control room. So let me just come over here and let's say if I start with the drum loop, just jump home here real quick. All right, so let's say I have this drum loop playing a couple times here. So let's say while I'm auditioning other loops, let's say I'm looking for bass, I could so you could do that. Now, one other thing, if you're not hearing this and you're using the control room, try going to your preferences. And when you go to your control room here, at that point we could say, make sure that use phones channel for the preview channel is not checked. Otherwise, you'd only hear it from your, with your headphones. All right, so we have Richard Michael says, hi, greetings from Wales. I hope you're well. I'm doing great, thank you. Can you do a short demo on how to comp several takes on a vocal track, please? Okay, so I think I have a pre-project for this. Let me see if it's still within my... Yep. Okay, so as we often will do vocal recordings, and if we record vocals or audio on top of other events, when we come here we'll see that we could have these kind of stacked in lanes. So when we want to open up our lane view, we can now see let's say different tracks. So this will be take 1, take 2, take 3, take 4, 5, 6, etc. So if I want to grab the comp tool, which is this little hand, I can now select different takes. And then if I'm like, okay, maybe I want to hold down the control key, I could listen to different takes right here and say, okay, I want that one instead, and let's try this. And if I wanted to change the start or end point of that, sorry. And you could also come over here and slip audio within the take, holding down the control or command key. And then once that's all kind of set up, you can now have your comp. So that could be across multiple performances very easily. All right, so we see Diego just asks, hi Greg, I can't seem to get my CMC QC Steinberg to control the quick controls of plugins. I also have a PD which works fine. For some reason, the CMC QC appears twice on the lower window. So let me know if you are using it for, if you're using it for quick controls. I'm not sure when you say in the lower window, if you're using it as a MIDI remote. If you see it as a MIDI remote and it's kind of set up twice, it could be conflicting with, with itself. Also, the CMC QC, you can have it in different modes depending on the buttons you hit, where it could function as a MIDI remote. It could function where it's just going to transmit particular MIDI CC values, or specifically as quick controls. And quick controls can be, since version 12, we have quick controls which could load up your quick controls in your device. But if we wanted to, there's also focus quick controls which are different. So make sure which mode you're in, if you're in MIDI CC mode or if you're in quick control mode. If you're in quick control mode, you don't really have to set it up. If you're doing it in the MIDI remote, that'll work, but it won't necessarily do focus quick controls. But if it's in MIDI CC mode, where the 8 knobs are transmitting the MIDI continuous controllers, at that point you could have them work as focus quick controls. So make sure you're, which mode of the CMC QC you're actually in, and that can make a big difference. All right, wonderful to see Brian Sawyer, Sr. from Beulahville, North Carolina. It's wonderful to see you last week on the Zoom meetup, and give another special thanks to Mr. Tim Hinckley for sharing all his great stories and career insights with us. All right, Michael Teams wants people to whack the like button. All right, so we see, hi Greg, can you route multiple Groove Agent pads to a bus channel at once? Thanks. Okay, so let's say we have Groove Agent here. So let's go ahead and just open it up. Let's see if we have, may not be routed to, okay, so we'll come over here. Let's say we have, okay, so I'm not sure if it's a, if you're routing it to, if it's from an acoustic agent. So let's say we go to the acoustic agent and say I want to take, I think if we come here, we could select one. So we could send these to output to, and then when we come over here, we could take output. I'll just do this from a new project, be less. Okay, so if we're doing like a beat agent kit. All right, so let's say if I select multiple pads here, and let's see if I could send these all to output 2. Okay, so we'll get to my mix console. Okay, so those are all now sent to output 2. So with a beat agent kit, we'll hear like a reverb. So let me just check the output routing. So yeah, these are all now being sent to output 2. So bus 1, the 5 that I selected are now going to output 2. And then all you have to do, so once it's sent to its own output, let's see if we can come over here and add a, so at this point, if we add a group track, we can take this output and route it to the group like this. So now as we hit these are being sent to the group. So that way we can take that particular output and then route it to the group. All right, so we have a question from the Ninja Scared. What volume should my control room be on to get perfect levels for mixing? So, you know, the control room volume is not really going to be so contingent on perfect levels for mixing. So we could think of the control room volume is your monitoring volume. So it's not going to output, it's not going to have an effect on the exported audio file. It just is going to, so if we come here, let's say we'll have an audio track, and just to show, I'll go to an insert, and let's go to our test tone generator. So we'll come here, we'll see our test tone generator, and I'll just adjust my control room. So we can think of this, you know, what's more important is what, you know, for the exported file, what is being sent here on the master. A lot of people aim for -12 to -6 on the master, and our control room is just our monitoring volume. So as I change this is our monitoring path, but it doesn't affect the gain structure of the mix. So your control room should be set for a comfortable monitoring level. I know many people that, you know, will swear that they will get, you know, Elliot Shiner, you know, dear friend of mine, amazing mix engineer, you know, done everyone, you know, all the classic Steely Dan records, Fleetwood Mac and the Eagles, like when they get back together, Elliot's the guy that gets the call. He mixes incredibly soft. So, you know, think of the control room as just your monitoring level. There's a good chance if your monitors are screaming for 8 hours of the mix that you're going to be losing some sensitivity of your hearing to the mix. So what you want to do probably is just to make sure that, you know, the control room is at a comfortable monitoring level. So it's not going to really affect the output of the mix for you. Okay. So we see the real DJ AP says, yay, UAD is now VST3. And says Cubase Apple users rejoice. So yeah, finally, we told you that, you know, it was up to them to do. So it's a wonderful update to have kind of VST3 after all of these years. So it's been 15 years. Glad that they got and finally delivered for their customers. So it's wonderful news. All right, so we see Tiago from Brazil. We have Neil Conway checking in from Oregon. All right, so we see this is Cubase 13. Change the sound or anything? Thank you. So, with the audio engine, there's new plugins that are included, but the audio engine has not really changed from Cubase 12 to Cubase 13, so no real change in the sound. But with the plugins like the new Pultec style EQs, the new compressors, the vocal chain, that could help you get to new sounds quicker. So you see, hey Greg, Cubase 13 is amazing, but do you think we will get multi-mono plugin compatibility for plugin inserts? That would be incredible. So one of the things that's kind of interesting, I think, that a lot of people run into with multi-mono plugins on inserts is, it can introduce a lot of phasing issues as well. So I know some people have particular workflows that it kind of ties into, but it can induce a lot of phasing issues. So we see the real DJ AP. We need Steinberg to add hardware insert presets for audio connections for in and out. It's a pain for those of us who use external effects on a mobile system. So check out also, once you're in the setup, and for your setups, I know I haven't really gotten a great reason why we don't have presets for external effects and external instruments. But you can add things to favorites, and the favorites will recall the I/O settings. Okay, so you see the real DJ AP says, I've been using Cubase dialysis since the mid-90s. Greg knows 30 times more things than I do, so I'm still always learning new things as well. All right, so Tiago asks, question, is Cubase 13 heavier than Cubase 12? I have an old laptop that worked fine for version 12, but I'm not sure if it'll run the actual version. Thanks. So I think, a lot of people reported it that it's better CPU performance for them. It could really depend upon your system as well, but I don't think you'll notice any significant differences. It's not going to be, I don't think you'll find it heavier if you're using, more plugins, So it's always hard to do an exact A/B comparison, but I think you'll be fine. If Cubase 12 is working great on your system, then your Cubase 13 should work just as well, if not better. Okay. See, Uno Momento is getting lots of rain in Finland. Sorry to hear about that. So we see question, is it possible to use Cubase to control/play, record VST instruments on a different PC? So, you could do it. One method that you could do to make it a little easier might be to just come over here, and if you go to the studio setup, there is a function called VST system link. So if you have digital audio connections between different computers, you could have multiple computers used, where you could have one computer that's almost like an instrument farm, if you will, to kind of have different instruments automatically sent out. So you could do it that way. And there's other solutions like VE Pro. I think a lot of people use that as well. But I've seen kind of more of a trend of people migrating more for to have a single system with multiple instrument tracks disabled, and kind of migrating to that level. Okay. Okay. Just reading through comments. Okay, so we see, is there any way to level the velocity of the chords all at once? So if it's in the chord pads, so let me just jump back. right, so let's say if it's kind of with chord pads, let's say we do playing chords here, and then you could adjust the velocity there. If it's going to be something like, okay, I have chords that are in my project, and all of these are different velocities. Let's say we'll just come here. And we want to just and let's say our chords are just all sorts of different velocity values. So one of the things you could do is, if you see here, you can see your velocity. I think if you hold down shift, maybe I'll say, okay, let's go to 100, hold down shift. See if that's the right modifier. Okay, so just so if you select all the notes, come here into the velocity, you could say, I just want this to, I say 88, hold down Control or Command, and then hit Enter, and then all the chords will have the same fixed velocity. So if you want them all to be the same, if they're all different, you could bring them up. So if you want to, increase proportionally, if you go to your velocity here, you could increase and decrease the velocity values like that. But if you wanted them all to be fixed, hold down Control Command after typing in the value, and they will all be set to the same level. And one other trick that a lot of people don't know is if you hold down Control or Command plus the Shift, you could adjust the velocity of just one note within a particular chord as well. So Control, Command plus Shift, and just hover, just click on the note, and you can move it up and down and see the different velocity values there. So let me know if that's helpful. All right, so we have LMC just checking in from South Africa from Johannesburg. Thanks for joining. Glad you can make it today. All right, so we have Big West 456 from Richmond, Virginia. All right, so we have a fellow Virginian. So I miss going down to doing Club Cubase meetings with Carlos Chafin at In Your Ear Studios. Wonderful, amazing to the addition. Carlos is so great for the Richmond music community. All right, so we see question. Hi, Greg. Can I control multiple instrument tracks with one MIDI keyboard? Split keys, please. So yeah, let's come over here. We just do a new project. So let's add 4 instrument tracks, and let me just undo that and add 4. So here I'll just add 1 instrument track. We'll make it a Hallian Sonic. All right, and we'll choose kind of a synthy sound. All right, and let's add another instrument track. Let's make it Retrolog. Okay, so we'll come. All right, so say kind of synth pad, and now let's add another instrument track, and let's go to Pad Shop. All right, so let's come over here and just find my input transformer. Let's see where this got moved to. Alright, let me just see if we have it in here. Alright, it's usually like an input transformer. Just see if it's in a different area. Right. Well, what you could do with like kind of there's an input transformer. I'll find it for the other night. It's usually in kind of the very top area here. I'm probably just missing it. Let's see if it's. But what the input transformer will allow you to do is to, and we'll show it as MIDI inserts here. And what you could do is say on this particular track, we want to filter so say we'll insert, choose transform, and then we could say I want to transform notes. And then we could say that have, I'll remove this and but yeah, I mean usually, and then we could kind of set the particular range. I'm just seeing where the input transformer went to. But yeah, it's usually just a quick input transformer. You can say, you know, fill only these notes to there and only notes that are going here from the input, and you can do it to multiple MIDI channels if it is like within Howling and Sonic, and I'll dig it up where the input transformer is. But let's say if we're here and we're inside of Howling and Sonic, we can also just take different instruments. And then once we go to the MIDI, here we could say this range is only for these particular notes. And you could kind of do splits that way, but you can do it with the input transformer. I'm just kind of having I'll have to look up where to access it on the new versions here on 13, but the input transformer will do that for you. Sorry about not finding that. So we see from Serenity, it says I like Cubase 13, but I think the fonts are too much bold now. So I think after a while you get used to it. I thought that at first, but now I really appreciate it. Right, so we see from DJ Stats, all right, Greg, I seem to have a stability issue, flickering when loaded in Cubase 13 with supervision. Is this a known issue? I'm currently waiting for a reply from tech support. Thanks. So, let me know, if you want to email me as well, you could, let me know, which particular, if it's in a particular module or not. But sometimes, I know that some of this stuff was addressed kind of during the testing phase, but if you want to send email to me with details, I'd be happy to kind of follow up. And you can email me at clubcubase@steinberg.de. All right, wonderful to see Dave Griffiths on. All right, so we see Nick is enjoying his Cubase 13 experience. All right, so David Griffiths asks, how do I select post-fader insert effects in the inspector? It just shows pre-fader for me, thanks. Okay, all right, so let me see. Post-fader inserts. Okay, so let's say we're on an audio track. Right, so now what we have is kind of a +1 mentality with the inserts. So let's say if we add an insert here, so let's say, okay, I want to add that. So at this point, if we right click, let's see if we just, we can say move to post fader slot, and then you could just move that down, and then you can move the line right there. So again, just kind of right click on the inserts, and then you can move it to a post fader slot, and then come over here and adjust the particular inserts as well. So if you now want to come over here, so if you want to move to pre fader slot, so just come right here and select the insert, and we'll say we'll move it to post fader. And then once you do that, then you could adjust the post fader line, and you could just kind of can continue to drag and place it as you see fit. All right, so we see from Neil Conway, Greg Magoo here. What screen were you using to manipulate the pitch of a track? What offsets or snap to intervals are there? So, not sure if that was like in the Groove Agent, but if it's for like a MIDI event, so let's say I go to Retrolog and I look at Retrolog, and I have the pitch bend in Retrolog set for 3 up and 3 down, so that when I play a note and I move my pitch bend wheel, it goes 3 semitones up, 3 semitones down. So if we want to do this with the pitch bend to match this, we could go to the pitch bend setup, and we can say let's go 3 up and 3 down, and then we could choose to show the reference levels. So now if we had a note at this point, we could say, okay, I want to draw my pitch bend in, and we could enable snap So at this point we can say, okay, I want my pitch bend to start here and just kind of snap right here, so that way it's going to not be out of tune all the time, but as we would play the particular note, we could just have that pitch bend automatically snap to the grid. So you want to make sure that when you go to the pitch bend setup that this matches what's in your particular instrument, and then you could show the semitone grid, and then if you wanted to automatically snap to wherever you edit it, you could do that as well. All right, so we see a question. Hi, can you please comment on the Dolby Atmos integration and workflow versus Nuendo? So one of the things, Nuendo is going to have some more functionality. So Nuendo could have multiple beds. Where in Cubase, where we do, often what's called Dolby Atmos for music, it's going to be a single bed. But Nuendo will have multiple beds. So that way you may have a bed for one for sound effects, one for dialogue, one for music, whereas everything in Cubase is really designed for Dolby Atmos for music. Another difference would be that Nuendo can import ADM files, which is the exported Dolby Atmos files. So Nuendo can import the ADM files and Cubase can't. It could export the ADM files for the deliverable, but if you needed to fix someone else's ADM mix, you could import that into Nuendo. All right, so we see, hi, is there any way to change the mixer background color? Because in C, if we have a number of tracks, let me just come over here and I'll just set a quick preference. All right, so let's come over here to okay, so let's say I will come over and add, let's say we get a new project and I add 16 tracks and I have this now automatically set to colorize. So we'll just add a number of tracks. Okay, so we now could have colors. When we go to our mix console, we can also come to the preferences and we'll say that we want to colorize tracks. So now when I hit apply, we can see that the tracks will now be colorized. We could colorize the folder tracks. We could also colorize. So let's open up, let's say, our mixer. So we open up our mixer if we wanted to change kind of the background colors of that. So again, go to your preferences, and now you could have your mix console channel colors based on the track colors. And if you wanted to change the color strength of that, you could come over and just say, we'll hit apply, and then you could change kind of the mixer background colors like that. So all right, so we see Mars Needs Max says he's loving the new Cubase. All right, so we see question, can a project notepad font text be changed? So I think it's going to be the same size. I'm not sure if there's any changes in that, but let's go ahead and take a quick look. So it's going to be a project. And let's get to our notepad. So let's say if we type in our various notes. All right, and I think maybe on Mac OS that there's someone told me that it might be on Windows that if you hold down like Control or Alt option that there was a way, but I think that this font will stay the same size. But if you export it, if you come here to export as, you could export the notepad data, then it's a text file that you could change the font. But right, so you see from Ali Al-Zaire, it says in Cubase 13, the color only works like boundary. So I'm not sure if that's kind of related to the mix console question or not, but maybe if you could, yeah, so it's going to be like the individual channels, so it's related to the previous question. All right, so we see from Luis Che from Chicago, is there a way to automate the faders between two values? Let's say minimum, maximum. So if the VCA channel gets louder, it would decrease its level, and the other way around. So I'm not sure if you wanted like one fader to, like, let's say if this was the VCA, if you wanted that particular fader, one to go inverse of this particular file, like if you wanted like one fader, like if you raise the VCA fader, that this goes down. So I don't know of a way to do that, or if that is practical for a lot of uses, but maybe if you could specify like a workflow. So if if this was, let's say if I select this fader and we add a VCA fader to this, that while these are linked, I'm not sure if you wanted those to be inverted or not. So maybe, Lewis, if you could let us know if that's what you want. So I'm just reading. So let's say minimum, maximum. So if the VCA channel gets louder, it would decrease the level, and the other way around. So, but yeah, maybe if you give me kind of more of a, like an example of what you want to do. Okay, so we had the hard raver. Says I'm really struggling with the MediaBay because I can't always change the output to hear the sounds. When I hear the sounds of MediaBay, I don't hear the track. So we did cover that a little earlier. So let me know if you tried those suggestions. If you have the control room activated, and if you come over, and also the preferences to control room, if you have preview channel set to active through phones channel. So if you could let me know those things, that would be helpful. All right, so we see from Costa Kotzelis, thanks for everything you do, Greg. I really prefer Cubase 12 3D look and do not like Cubase 13 2D look. Could you please forward request programmers for skins? So I'm not sure if this is Costa, who used to live in Northern Virginia, who went on to great fame as composer and assistant for Harry Gregson Williams. If it is, hi Costa, we used to work together. But I'm not sure, sometimes skins can be really tricky to get those to work universally across multiple video display cards and stuff, but I'll pass it on. But, to me, I didn't like the appearance at first, like for the first week, but after working with it, I much prefer it, and I find it much easier to read the channel parameters than previous versions. I know that it will take a transition, and most people that have just gotten Cubase 13 or just, in the middle of the transition. But for me, when I go back, like the last month or so doing live streams, I really missed the Cubase 13 mixer when working in Cubase 12. So I think, I felt the same way. Now I kind of prefer this to the previous generation. So, but I'll pass it along regardless. All right, great to see Jazzy Lamel. All right, so Andy asks, hi Greg, always appreciate these sessions. Any chance you could show Cubase 13 track version drop down? I pointed out a shortcoming in the spring with version 12 that made it hard to select due to scroll limits, etc. All right, so let's see if I add some more track versions. I'll duplicate several track versions here. All right, so now let's say for here, and let's say if I add some more, so if I'm not sure if I'm remembering this correctly, but I'll just come over here, let's duplicate some more. So there's like, it's like 14 different track versions are visible. So let me know if that's helpful, or if you could remind me. I'd be happy to kind of take a look through it. Okay. Okay, so we see from cycling is awesome, CC learning. So I think I did cover that. Let me know if, what your Behringer is transmitting. All right, so Andy also asks, also wondering if you could show what, if any, changes there are to expression map GUI. Thanks. So I think that is pretty much the same as in previous versions with that, so I don't think there is many changes in that area of the program. Maybe we'll see it as kind of more of an overhaul in the future. All right, so we see in Cubase 13 anything new about Dolby Atmos though. So I don't think that there was many changes in the Dolby Atmos integration. It was just implemented in 12.1, so or 12.01. So I think it's pretty similar to what it was before. So, all right. So we see from Tunser Toklu asks, is there a way to fix the VST3 blacklist issue? I think it's a block list issue now. A large number of VST instruments are affected. So make sure that when you go into your VST plugin manager, and it could be when you go to the block list, a lot of these could be like VST2 plugins, or they could be plugins, so make sure that it's not like a 32-bit plugin that's installed, so you could actually check. But once you actually look at it, you can choose to reactivate here, and the reason that it gets put into a block list is that it's deemed to cause system instabilities. So it could be maybe getting a later version of the plugin may help. Sometimes when you install plugins, you get a VST2, a VST2 32-bit, a VST3 64-bit, a VST3 32-bit, and it may just be like, you may still have those instruments. So realize that, if it's in the block list, that it's kind of deemed an unstable plugin to work with. But you could try to remove it and take it out of the block list and see if that will do the trick. All right, so we have Lawrence from Barn Door Recording checking in from Rhode Island. Glad you can make it today. All right, just my chat field just jumped on me. Let me find my spot. All right, just trying to find my spot where it was. All right, I may have lost some questions. I'm sorry, I'm so far behind. Lots of questions. So I apologize if I've lost some questions on it. Okay, so we see Mars Need Max just says happy birthday, Greg. So yeah, it was on Sunday. We had a really nice, relaxing day. And my mother-in-law and sister-in-law were able to be in town visiting, so that was nice. All right, so Brian Sawyer Sr. says, I love the new vocal plugin. Can you explain where to start and a process to go through it? So a lot of times when you're kind of, starting off, if you're not familiar with the vocal chain, it's a new plugin. So there's a new plugin category called vocals, so a lot of times what I do with these is to kind of get familiar with it is I'll just kind of start with a particular preset. So you may want to just come over here, so say, okay, I want to do a bright ballad vocal. And then as we come over here, the vocal chain, if you haven't seen it yet in Cubase 13, and I think one of the great things in Cubase 13 is how it can consolidate parameters and information that was kind of separated before. So this is one plugin that could have kind of, different filters. We could have noise gates. We could have pitch correction, de-essing, dynamic filters, so dynamic EQ, different compressors, and we give you the new compressors that come with it. But if you want it like the vocal comp algorithm, you want the black valve, extreme or transparent, you could switch between different algorithms and EQ. Also coming over here, you could have a character section. So you can say, I want my exciter, my saturator, a compressor. So these maybe are for more color. So more kind of, flavor, a little more distortion. And then you'll have different effects where I want the vocal to sound wider, narrower. I want to add a delay or a reverb. So instead of having to load up 16 separate insert effects on a particular vocal track, you could just have all of these going on one. So start with the preset and say, oh, I like this, and listen to each part. You can take each part in and out by clicking right here, and at that point, play around with it. But it really consolidates so much processing on vocal tracks into one single interface, one plugin. All right, so we see the link to buy Cubase is 13 is not working. So it seems like it's been working for a lot of people. Let's take a quick look. So let's say buy Cubase 13. Let's say we'll buy Cubase 13 Pro. And now you could, so it looks like it's working for me. So let us know if you're what country you're in, because it could be different depending what country you're residing in. And but it seems like it's working. If anyone else has it not working for them, let us know. All right, so we see Mars Need Max, Greg will Steinberg Yamaha be putting out a full integration video for the new, I guess it's is it the Modium or in Cubase 13? So a lot of times we I don't know of any plans of that, but I could reach out to a colleague and see if there's on the synthesizer side and see if one is going on. So, what we are in the same company, but sometimes Yamaha just doesn't send all the keyboards over for us to do and vice versa. So, but I'll check with a colleague to see if there's any planned. If you want to email me to follow up, you could send it. You could reach out at clubcubase@steinberg.de. Okay, so we see, hey brother, can you tell me how to unlink any track channel from the master bus so the track will not send signals to master channel but only on a bus? All right, so let's say if I come here, I'm going to I'm going to take this particular track, so let's take audio 18. I'm going to go to add track. Let's add a group channel to this track. So we'll add our group channel. So this sound is now going out to the group channel, and then the group channel, I could just choose, if I don't want this group to go to the bus, I would just choose no bus on that particular group channel. You could also just come over here, and on our output, you could choose no bus on the track as well. All right, so we see Mars Needs Max says, I'm loving the new chord tracks. Part of the chord pad, so it's great. All right, so we see, I see it's directed to Jazz Dude. It says, I have Cubase 12, need the link for Cubase 13. So really all you'd have to do is purchase the update, and then you could, have your that would give you the link for the license for Cubase 13, and your Cubase 12 stays intact as well. All right, wonderful to see Brianna from Youngstown, Ohio. Glad you can make it. All right, and we see I've been running Cubase 12 for years now. I needed $99 so I could update. So, yeah. Yep, so as soon as you update, then you'll be all set to go. All right, so we see from Homeworld Studio, just says, many thanks. Can I insert or drag my own pattern to the chord pad? So we'll show you how to do that. Okay, so let's say we will come over here to, let's say we have a particular pattern. I go to my chord pad, so let's say, activate this project. So I have just kind of block chords here. But let's say I have a musical pattern. So let's say I have like a pattern that looks like this. So if you want to take your own patterns as the basis, drag it to where it says, just drag it right here. And now we could, again, just come over to So all you have to do is just take any MIDI event on the project window and just drag it right to, where you say, it may say playing chords or patterns or sections. At that point, just drag it right there, drop it, and now it's just going to play that particular pattern for you. See, See, both Nick and Jazzy are finding similar performances between Cubase 12 and Cubase 13. All right, so you just see from Durham, 11v11 discount. So I'm not sure if you wanted to, there is a discount from going from Cubase 11 to Cubase 13. So if you come here and let's say we go to buy Cubase, we can say we want to buy Cubase Pro. At this page, we could select updates and upgrades, and then you can say you want to update from, Cubase Artist. You want to update from Cubase Pro 12. So you can say I want to update from Cubase Pro 11. And then you can update right there. So if that's your question, let me know. If I misunderstood, also let me know. All right, so we have a question. How do I use MIDI in Cubase to automate my guitar amp and pedals? So a lot of times they will respond to program changes. So what you want to do is to right click, we need to add a MIDI track. We need to connect that somehow MIDI wise to your device. Most of them will do USB. So let's say we will create an event, and I'm just going to create kind of a blank part here. And we'll call this, amp model. All right, and I'll just hold down the control key and rename the event. Now within the event, a lot of times if you have like different presets that you want to change, those changes are controlled by what's called a program change. And program changes often switch sounds in effects devices or keyboards. So we're going to double click. We will now come over and look, and for our lane, we'll just start off, and you'll probably see just velocity only. So we'll come here and just say, okay, I only want to see velocity. Click in this little line, and then you want to choose a MIDI system common message called program change. And once we have program change, we could come in and say, okay, we're going to start at this point. We could select and say, okay, we want this to be program change 50. And I need it to change in the verse right here to be value, and we could move this graphically as we see fit. And right now I need that to be 81. So now when we play back our sequence, it'll send program change 50 to your guitar processor. When it gets to this point, it'll send program change 81 or whatever values that you have. And that way, as you play the sequence, your guitar processor can change and be automated with the different changes. All right, so we see Graham Witchers really enjoying the Iconica Sketch orchestral instruments. All right, so we see Cubase user asks, "Hi Greg, is there a key command for moving event up and down in a project window, track to track, which can be any audio event?" All right, so let's say I have, let me just drag a loop in here. Okay, so let's say I have this, and I'm going to add a number of audio tracks here. So we will just add a number of audio tracks. So if we wanted to take, make sure I'm reading this right. Okay, so it is moving the event. So when we come here, so there's just an event. So we'll come over here, and I think it's called nudge up and down. So we'll go to our key commands. All right, and I'll just come over here and we'll just say, okay, we want to nudge up. thought it was. All right, so there's nudge, and I think if we go up or down, so let me go ahead and just assign it in the MIDI remote here. So I will just go to my MIDI remote and we'll assign this function. Let's just reassign this. So I'll just have this be and let's do up. So now as I hit the buttons, so nudge down will go down, nudge up moves it up. So you can assign keyboard shortcuts to those, or just simply assign it with like a MIDI remote to move the event up and down to different tracks. So again, it's going to be nudge up and nudge down. All right, so we see, hi Greg, happy belated, thank you. Recently upgraded Cubase 12 to Nuendo 12. Thanks for lobbying for the range tool and the key and drum editor. Hoping it'll come up soon with Nuendo 13. Is it true Nuendo always has Cubase features? So it is recently. So, you know, it used to be kind of separate functionality, but now, you know, Nuendo will have all of the Cubase features. And I think that's kind of the paradigm that's been set. And I think that will continue forward. Okay, so you see kind of a clarification from Taylor, just saying, sorry for the brain cramp on blending in Groove Agent SE. Is it possible to change the blend level of layered samples using the mod wheel, not the scroll wheel, while playing and recording? So I think generally, like with Groove Agent, since, you know, what you're actually doing, you know, as you have different samples, you know, it's intended, and especially with drums, to use the velocity value, because it's kind of more true to how the instrument is designed, where if it was kind of, you know, because as you hit the sample, you know, like a drum sound, when you hit it, it's basically going to be the same sound, as opposed to like a string instrument or a wind instrument, where as you play the bow, you could dig into the bow harder, you can change the breathing, the speed of the air going through the instrument as you kind of excite the air. And that's why those will be more based on modulation, because those can dynamically change. But like piano, percussion instrument, drums, once you hit the drum, it doesn't, you know, just how the instrument naturally is, you don't really change the level afterwards. You know, you kind of have the initial attack, and you can't really change the sound of a piano, you know, and this is kind of could be, you know, a bone of contention for a pianist. You know, say, wow, you know, your instrument, you can't really change the sound once you hit the key. And you go, well, yeah, you can. Like, oh, it's, you know, it's kind of a limitation, and it's kind of the design of the instrument. And drums are the same way. You have the initial attack, and that's what generates the sound. So unlike an orchestral instrument where the violin bow may swell, the cello, the strings can do a crescendo in the middle of the note. They can play louder and softer. A lot of times drum and pianos don't do that, which is why it's going to be more velocity based versus using like a MIDI CC message. All right, so we see from Tim Weinheimer says Cubase 13, all I can say is wow, great new features, Plus, you get Greg and Dom to teach how to use it for the $99 upgrade worth it. We'll upgrade soon before the end of the year. So. All right, so we see from PD to PT the producer, is there any way to link channels from the project view without going to a mix console? All right, so let's say if I want to come here, so I think, the linking is going to be based on the mixer. We can group particular channels together. Sorry, just got a text from my son's string teacher. All right, so, we could group events here. So let's say if I have this event here and just, on the project window, we can choose to group events. So if I come here and hit Control or Command plus the letter G, so now when I move an event, these are all grouped together. So we have that for editing, but when we want to link channels, I don't think it works the same because it's going to be more of the mixer parameter. But let's see if I have all these, and I'm just going to check my levels here on my selected channels. So these are all at 0 dB. Let's go back to, let's say, our MIDI remote here, and let's say if I hold down my Alt plus Shift, and let's take a look at the mixer and see if they all changed. Yeah, so whatever tracks are selected here, so you see that these have moved here. So I have these tracks selected, and even when there is no lower zone or no mix console, so I'll come here, let's say there's no lower zone, I'll move all these down to holding down Alt or Option plus Shift, and then if I hit F3, we'll look at our mixer. We see that those 3 channels are gone, and we hit Alt or Option plus Shift and raise them up, and we go to our mix console. You can see that those selected channels are now raised. So you could do it just using the standard Q-Link or Quick Link functions. All right, so we see Michael Pierce on. Glad you can make it today. Says he has a dead workstation he's trying to fix. So sorry to hear that. That's always no fun. We hope you get it repaired quickly. It looks like he has the most corrupt hard disk he's ever seen. So it's a bummer. Sorry to hear that. I'm sure Amazon will be willing to sell you more new components. All right, so wonderful to see Pablo on from Galicia, España. Everyone's favorite drummer in the Club Cubase community. All right. So Pablo just says, love the Groove Agent stuff. Looks like he's maybe waiting for Simon Phillips stuff. All right, so Mike Reinhardt asks, hi Greg, is there any way in Cubase to generate a random patch in a VST synth that does not have that functionality built in, maybe by using the logical editor? Not really anything that would be kind of predictably useful, I think. So, generally it's going to be we could have it automatically generate different MIDI CC data. So if you go to, let's say, a MIDI insert here, we could say, okay, I want to have, MIDI control, and I want these particular MIDI CCs to, be randomized. So, we could do some stuff like that, but I don't think, but there's a really strong chance that those parameters won't be addressable via those particular MIDI CC messages. So it's really going to be kind of up to the instrument to kind of generate its own randomness, and if you have an instrument that's just a sample piano versus a 3 oscillator or virtual analog synth, that those could all be different things. So I would say that there probably isn't a way to do that, and it's probably best left into the instrument, because the instrument knows what parameters it has to work with. All right, so we just see a question from Brianna. How can I change the color on the meter panel with the control room Cubase 13 Pro? Okay, so let me just jump to a particular project here real quick. All right, so let's say I have my meter here. So you have to figure out which meter that we have. So right now we have the digital studio. So when I go to my preferences, so we're going to say this is our digital scale, and we'll come over here to metering, to appearance. And we want to kind of match this. So we say digital scale. So now I could say, okay, I want it to be more red. So as I come over here and we play our track, but the thing to realize is, as we're working with this, we can just say, if I switched this meter to a different meter, make sure that you could have independent meter coloring for all these different types of meters. So make sure that what you're adjusting the colors on, and if you wanted to just come over here and adjust and make your own pretty colors and say, okay, I want this more blue. You could make all of those adjustments, but make sure that this meter label, because these could all be independent from this drop down list, is matching here. So the default will be digital scale, and at that point you could just kind of come right over there and go back. So that's how you could adjust the control room meter. All right. All right, so we see Madge Deepers checking in. So thanks for joining us. Says hi all, and she's hoping everyone is well. Thanks for being online today. So we see Fernando ask, hi Greg, are those new Cubase 13 plugins going to be available for Cubase 12? So no, they're going to be tied into Cubase 13. So, if you wanted to have access to those plugins, just simply upgrade to 13 and you get that in Iconica Sketch and and as you saw on Friday's live stream, about 2 hours and 15 minutes of other new features in detail. So if it's a great bargain for your $99 upgrade. See Pablo saying Cubase 13 is running well on his crappy i7 second generation laptop. All right, you see John Barry just says, Greg, thanks for arranging the guests for the Zoom meeting. Lovely trip down memory lane, quite insightful of the time. So yeah, I always love hanging out with Tim because he always just will have such wonderful stories. And just seeing little tidbits he posts on Facebook. He's like, oh yeah, when I hung out with so-and-so and I played with them, and it's like, oh wow, I had no idea. So All right, so we see from Nick, Saya opened a large session on Cubase 13. It was choking a bit, all the same settings as 12, but 12 doesn't choke. So, make sure that you have, there's a lot of different settings, such as you guard and some other settings. But, if you have, if you want to share a quick video and go through all your settings, Nick, please feel free to send it on over. All right, so wonderful to see Steve McRae on from Atlanta. And thank you for the birthday wish. I appreciate that. Yeah, so it was my birthday on Sunday, Pablo. All right, so we see hello all from Atlanta, Georgia. Will we ever be able to stretch MIDI notes within the piano roll editor? All right, so let's take a look. I think we have some MIDI parts in here. Let me just... All right, so let's say we want to come here. So, if you wanted to take these notes, you could stretch them kind of like that just by grabbing their edges. So... And you could also do sizing applies time stretch. So if I want to take these notes and just time compress, just like this. So there's different sizing modes, so we could just time stretch accordingly. So if you wanted to just come here, you go normal sizing or sizing applies time stretch. And that was from Yish in Your Ear from Atlanta. Okay, so we see from No Name says, hi Greg, I was wondering what are the maximum number of chord pads that could be displayed at the same time? Thanks for everything you do. All right, so when we go to our chord pads, we can now, let's go to, so we could do quite a bit. Let me just find out how to do it in... Because we could change the display. So, okay, so we see number of pads. So we could switch this to a grid, and we could say the number of pads we'll have is 4 rows of 16. So we could have 64 different chord pads at once. So come over to... you could change from keyboard to grid and have access to it right there. So you have 64, so should be enough chords for a song, I think. All right, so we see Michael Pierce asks, quick question. My workstation has been infected by goblins and is probably being wiped tomorrow. How easy it is to retrieve a lost license for Cubase and Nuendo 12 due to dead HD, hilariously dead. All right, so all you have to do now is if you go to your My Steinberg account, so we'll come here, I'll just log in. See if I remember my password. But once you go to your My Steinberg account, you could deactivate the license directly from there, even if your computer is dead. So let's see if we get this to kind of wake up. So we'll come here. I'm just going to log in quickly. All right, so once you're in your My Steinberg area, you could say deactivate licenses of unavailable computers. So, and then you could pick your computer that's unavailable, deactivate it, and you'll get that activation, so you can put it onto your brand new computer or hard disk. Michael, sorry to hear about that. I know that sucks to go through. So, but hopefully you'll have a better workstation in the future. All right. Okay, so you see from Wheeler Bear Paul says, had a problem with crashing on 13 Pro when dragging a sample from MediaBay to sampler control, fixed by deleting configuration file. Sorry to happen to you. All right, so we see Gaming Octopus asks, hi Greg, is it possible to tempo map MIDI? So yeah, we could do it using the tempo detection, or just by doing it manually with the time warp tool. So let's come over here. Let's see if I still have this in maybe my recent projects. I may have. See if I can find it quickly. All right, I'll just open it quickly. All right, so let's say as we're playing this and turn to click on, and don't really have any correlation between the two, so I could select the event, project, to tempo detection. So it's really the same process. You could now also come over if you wanted to manually move events. So you can say, okay, I see where this downbeat is. You could go into your warp and switch it to kind of warp grid. And at this point, you could say, oh, this downbeat needs to fall right here. So you could manually do it, or just have Cubase do it for you. All right, so we see from Eric Fox. Hello, Greg. Where is the default song key button on Cubase 13 now? So if we come over here, it could be maybe if it's like your global root key. So, you know, one of the things that had changed from previous versions was, you know, sometimes there was, I think, 6 or 7 different like little settings cogwheels, but just try to right click in the area. And there isn't necessarily like and then there isn't necessarily an icon to click on, but at this point you could come over here and I think we'll see like project root key. But it's kind of just right here. So let's say it's going to be just after my tools. So we see the color menu. Yeah, project root key, I'm sorry. Just having a brain cramp and not seeing it. So just kind of go right there. So just kind of right click in this area and make sure that the project root key is turned on. All right, so we have Pablo asks, how can I use the vocoder on a recorded voice? Okay, so let's do just new project here. Create empty. I'll just take a vocal file from the new soulful R&B vocals. So it's just kind of. Okay, so I'm gonna just put this on our project window here. All right, so what I want to do is to take this and I'm going to add a vocoder plugin. So let's do this as inserts, and I think we'll find it under pitch shift. So we'll say our vocoder. All right, so we have the vocoder. Now what we want to do is to add a MIDI track. And one of the things that's really handy is this new MIDI I/O organization. And we'll say our MIDI input, or we can say our MIDI output will be going to the vocoder plugin. So, we could do stuff like this. So, our MIDI output, we'll set it to, again, the vocoder plugin. And we'll tell this to respond to MIDI. So we'll come over here and I'll just pick a all right, let's see if I did it right. So at this point, we could have the vocoder just kind of, being fed from the MIDI. So this particular MIDI device, and we'll choose this to be external MIDI. That's the button I was looking for. So now, as we come over here, and you could just kind of do that. So that way you need a MIDI track to be feeding the MIDI data into the vocal track, into the vocoder, which is then being inserted on the vocal track. All right, so wonderful to see Gareth on with Pablo and Michael Teams. Great to have a hot mess reunion. Let's see, Jazz Dude says he once had multiple beds, but his wife told him it's a no-no. So he went back from Nuendo to Cubase. All right. All right, so apparently Gareth and Pablo are members of the Michael Teams Fort Worth motorcycle gang. Sounds dangerous. All right, so we see from Michael Pierce, and he's just kind of directed to Jazz Dude. Spectral layers are also off dongle. May need to reset some of those too. I'm assuming Groove Agent SE is simply licensed alongside Cubase. So yeah, since Spectral layers 9 and 10 were using the Steinberg licensing, and the Groove Agent SE is licensed with the Cubase. So Nick is saying he wants to be a Texan now. So. Okay, so we see from Alex Green, hi Greg, using preferences or config files, how can I get a new channel's pre-gain to default to -10, for example? All right, so let's see if we could, I don't think that this, may be saved. So let's say if we add an audio track, all right, and we go to our channel setting, I'll do it for the audio track this time. That would be helpful. All right. And let's say if we go to the EQ, and let's say we had a pre-gain here set. And we save this as the default EQ. Let me just undo that. So let's say if I do a new project and add an audio track. Sometimes the pre-section doesn't save. Yeah, so I don't know of a way to do that. I've been kind of lobbying for like a default track preset, you know, or track preset that you could set as default that would automatically include these things, so we could have this set, but not a way of kind of defaultly setting it to gain without having it as a kind of a track preset that you drag over. So I'll keep lobbying for that. All right, I'm just going to close the door real quick. Hang on. All right, sorry about that. My son's friend came over and he could be a little loud. All right, so make sure I close the door. Okay, so we see from Filter Freak says, sorry, did someone catch how to do post fader on the inserts? So when we come here, let's add an insert, and now I will just right click on it and we'll say move to post fader slot, and then once you move the, so we'll say, you know, move to, so right click, move to post fader slot, and then if you want to move this line here, you can now adjust so you don't have to see numbers of different empty insert slots. You see that Gareth is happy to see Pablo on. All right, well, great to see Gerald Ely on the live stream. Glad you can make it from Martinez, California. All right, we see Daniela Tokan on from Germany. Thanks for joining us this evening, your time. All right, so we see a question, can version 13 work with Catalina? So I haven't tried it yet. I know it's kind of designed for Big Sur and later. That's what the system requirements indicate, but it may mean that they just haven't tested it on Catalina, because obviously it's a lot of testing that has to go on for, you know, like 7 versions of each Mac OS. To make sure it's compatible. So maybe when the trial version comes out, but I think it's, you know, officially Big Sur or later for the system requirements, but it may work on earlier ones. Maybe if someone could share if they're running on Catalina. All right, so we see from Mikhail, says, hi Greg, I have a problem with glitches in graphics for the new Cubase 13 when I'm running Windows 11. Is this a common problem? Do you have any solutions to solve this? If you want to send me like a screenshot of what you're running into, so it's not common, I haven't run across it on any of my systems. But you could send me a screenshot to clubcubase@steinberg.de. I have seen some people that had like maybe like their mix console faders not showing up at the meters, and also with the like I saw one thing on Facebook where someone had like a transparent, like part of the desktop was showing through, and those could be kind of graphics display driver related, I think, especially for the transparent one. But if you want to send me a screenshot, I'd be happy to pass it along. And again, you can send it to clubcubase@steinberg.de. All right, so 7.2 asks, is the new version of the sample track featuring the new time stretching algorithm from Halion 7? Yes, it is. So we go to your sampler control. We'll come over here. And as we do this, we can see that when we go to our audio warp, that you'll have spectral, spectral HD, and spectral vocal. So those are the algorithms from Halion 7, and also you'll have a lot of the different envelope handling from Halion 7 that is migrated into the sampler track in Cubase 13. So Gareth Kitch says the new pop-up strip plugins are a great improvement. So if you haven't seen kind of the new pop-up plugins, this is really handy for channel strip. So as soon as we are over here, so we go to, let's say, just select our audio track. And let's make sure I got these set up. But we'll look at it so now as soon as we go to our strip, we can now just, once we're here, just kind of pop out instead of, I always found it annoying that when you went here, you'd open up the channel strip and like the EQ would pop up, which would be bigger than the whole window. But now we could have kind of unified control to come over here. Once something is active, click right here and have access to that particular function. Just with one mouse click, make your adjustments. So it makes the channel strip much easier to access the parameters. Sorry for my son and his friend running right above me. You may be hearing it on the microphone. All right, so Gareth says, I can honestly say that Cubase 13 is, sorry, you like the logic of all the new functions. All right, let me just find my spot. My chat field jumped on me. All right, so I may have lost some questions. I apologize for that. I'll try to catch up. See some more people wish me happy belated birthday, so it's very appreciated. Okay, so we see from Andy, says, Greg, thanks for replying to my question about the track versions. I meant to specify what I wanted to see was a track version panel in the inspector. Looks like scrolling down was tricky, so let's take a look at that for you. So I'll just duplicate some versions here. Thanks for the clarification on that. All right, so now we go to track versions here. So now it looks like it's much easier to scroll. I'll add just a couple more. So I'm just using my mouse scroll wheel here to go up and down. So let me know if that is kind of what you were looking for. I don't remember the exact behavior in 12, but let me know if that's helpful for you, Andy. Let's see, Gareth wants me to buy him a copy of Cubase, I think. So I have to buy my own. Just kidding. Occasionally they give me a free one. All right, so we have Leonardo Sants checking in from England. All right. See Bonsai Bayern just wish me a happy belated birthday. Thank you for that. All right, so you see from Cubase user, is there an update for Cubase 13 related to the graphic issue? I'm running Cubase 13 Pro on Windows 11, had issues with the graphics since I updated my Cubase version. So again, if you want to send me, there's lots of people that aren't having graphics issues, but if you want to send me a screenshot of what's going on, I'd be happy to pass it along. You see Gerald Ely says, okay, adding MIDI pattern to the chord pattern is so cool. So we see Yish in your ear says, I think we did this with the note stretch and the piano roll, so it is there already. See Gen X just says, just bought it. All right, Leonardo Sands asks, hi Greg, what is the initial setup you do if you need to work with audio for video regarding frames, grid, alignment, etc.? Let's say you have a video file and you need to create an audio project for it. So the first thing I would do is come over here. So I'll just do a new project and let's import a video file. Okay, let me just... All right, so let's say I'm here, I have my video file, so I've extracted the audio. Probably I want to work in frames, so we'll change our master format here to timecode. We will, hit F8. So let's say, to have our video window. Now, one of the things that's really important is to make sure that the frame rate of the video is being, is matched to your project frame rate. So a lot of times you may get a video and like European, like videos that are done in Europe are generally 25 frames per second. If they're done in other countries, they're going to be, could be 30 frames, could be 24 frames if it's HD, could be 2997, could be 2997 drop frames. So Cubase can't determine what the actual, frame rate is. So if you go to your project setup, so we'll come here to project setup, or you can hit Shift plus S. You can say so usually in the US we default to 30 frames per second, and it's very complex. why, but there could be pull up and pull down, so lots of different frame rates. So if you don't, and a lot of times people may give you a video and they don't know what the frame rate is. So here we could actually just choose get frame rate from video, and then that will make a lot of things. So those are the things that I would do initially to get started up, to make sure that your project is set up for video. Generally working with video, the sample rate, and this is also done in a project setup, set it to 48K as opposed to 44.1, and that's generally how video sample rate will work. So those are a couple things. All right, so I know we had a lot of questions that were mailed in. Let's get to those. Thank you for all the great questions from everyone. All right, so let me just dig up my Word document here. All right, so we had just a quick question: how to work with the new transport start modes. Okay, so let me just go to a particular project here. Go to this one. All right, so what we could do with the start modes is, before, we had the settings where if we had a particular file and we hit play, that, the file would, let's say if we were doing a particular edit on an event here, so say when I hit play, we could say, okay, we have this event, and then when I hit stop, it would just stop. But some people wanted it to go back to the start position. In previous versions, this was done by going into the preferences, into transport, and then you could say return to start position on stop. Now this has been kind of moved out front. So a lot of people have been kind of confused by this, where you can say, oh, we have start modes. So now I can say return to start position on stop. So when I play, I can now, when I hit the spacebar to stop, it goes right back to the start position. If we have different events, let's say we have events that are selected here, we could also adjust the start modes. So that as we come over here, we'll go to start modes and we'll say, let's start from the event selection. So if I have this event selected and my cursor is here, I can just play from wherever the event starts. So I don't have to select it, kind of move my cursor. I just select the event, hit play, and it'll play directly from that particular event. If we have this set up for cycle, we could also just say, if I have my cycle mode enabled, when we go to our transport, we could say, let's go to our transport start mode. We can say start from cycle start. So my loop, my left and right locators are set there. It'll just go based on there as opposed to my selection start. Now there's also a mode that kind of combines these. So when we go to our transport, we could say, let's start from selection or transport start. So if no event is selected, it goes to the cycle, or if an event is selected, it goes directly to the event selection. So that's a couple of the new modes for kind of just starting off. And now they're kind of more obvious and out in the open, so that you don't have to go hunting into preferences to change modes. Okay, so we have a question. How come when I add a new sample library to MediaBay, some samples automatically register as 60 C3, and how can I stop this? No other pitch is ever automatically attached, and it doesn't do it with all samples. I have a lot of synth samples labeled as 60 C3, in which there's no way I can correctly bulk label the correct key for each sample. But because of this labeling, the only other option I have is to select none for key, but obviously this is untrue. Thank you. So if we added a number of different tracks, so say I come here and we're going to call this samples. All right, and let's say I'm just recording audio here, so I'll just, let's say we'll punch in, sorry, I'll just kind of, just change my punch points here, sorry. Adjust my transport start mode here. record mode. Okay, so I'm just going to kind of punch in, punch out. All right, so when I look at these audio files, and we look at it in MediaBay, so we'll say, let's come over here. We're going to go to, like even within our pool window, we'll say, as soon as we come here, we'll see sample, sample, sample. None of these have any of the data that will have a particular root node. So let's come over to our MediaBay, and we'll come over to this computer, to documents, to projects, and we'll go to my Hangouts folder. All right, and then we will come over to just a rescan. All right, just check my pool window, make sure I had the path right. Sorry, wrong one. Sorry, wrong folder again. All right, so now when I come here, we can see that there is no root key. And I think when so I'm not sure how it's actually recording, but when we go to look at the pitch of the note, I'm not sure. I don't think it's being imposed by Cubase. A lot of times if you're, recording into a sampler, you may actually, so if you buy a sample pack, it may be that the sample designer, the sound designer, may have inadvertently just put a value on, but I don't, so without knowing how the sample is being recorded, Cubase won't automatically assign C3, but there's a good chance that the sample note metadata would be just kind of imported and carried over from the particular sound designer or the person that made the sample library. So, but Cubase isn't automatically adding that particular pitch for your samples. And when you change a root key, the key is going to be different than the actual MIDI note name. All right, so a question. Please help me out with this routing doubt. I send all my vocal tracks to a group channel named EFX. I have EQ, compressor, saturation, etc. So that the out for these vocal tracks is EFX channel. Besides, I have a delay and a reverb effects channels. The sends for reverb and delay should be placed in each vocal track or in the effects group. or is it the same? I think that if they're on each vocal track, the signal goes to the reverb and delay is not affected by the effects, and this is not what I want. All right, so let's take a look. We have this under this setting here. So right now I have, when we listen to this particular group, I have all these are going to a vocal group, and this vocal group is, when we go to the group, we could go to the sends here. So if I turn this off, we will hear our dry. Now, what I could do if I wanted these vocal tracks, instead of sending it from the group, if we send it from the particular channels, so we come over here to our sends, we'll say, okay, I want to go to my delay and reverb. Now what we could do is have, you know, they'll both work. So we would just come over here and route it from the sends. So that would work perfectly well. Now, the advantage to doing it via the sends versus on the individual tracks versus the group is that we could adjust the levels independently for each track. So this way, if I wanted more reverb on this one and less on this one, we could adjust accordingly here. So that could give you more flexibility. If when you put the ascends on the group and it sounds fine and you don't need different levels on each track, then the group is fine. If you wanted the flexibility to have different effect sends going on each particular track, then that's when you'd want to use the sends on individual track. They'll both get sent to the reverbs, but on individual tracks, it doesn't take any more CPU. The individual tracks allows you to vary the amount. Okay, another question we had, is there a way to play chord pads with left hand and the right hand play notes only in a corresponding scale chord that could be done in the scale assistant? So if we wanted to do like our chord pads here, so if we wanted to, so let me just change the chord pads here to more, we'll say playing chords. All right, so if we wanted to come over here, one of the things that you could do is, you know, on, and realize that some of the chord pads may be out of scale, but if we wanted to do this, we'll go into our scale assistant here. So I'll just do this within. Okay, so we'll see our scale assistant, and then we could just say snap live input. So let's say we want it to be in, let's look at our chord pads here. So we'll say C minor. So again, as we come over here, we'll just say, okay, we want this to be our scale C minor. Okay, so now I could play this, and we could snap the live input. So say as we're playing. So now I'm going to hit an E natural. So now at this point, let's see if we, you know, but you could always just come over here and quantize the pitches right afterwards. So that way you can play the chords and play a melody where those particular notes aren't playing the chords. But realize that sometimes when you're doing this, that you may trigger a pattern for chords, and those chords that are triggering the notes that are triggering the chord pads may be out of the tune, out of the scale. So that way you could just select the particular notes and quantize those pitches. All right, so we see, hi, I was just watching Club Cubase YouTube stream. Great as always. Thanks on Cubase 13. Notice that the optimization settings shown, I have an Intel 13900, but I don't see this option. So I think this was when we go to studio setup and we go to the audio system. So at this point, you may see optimizations if you have more than 8 physical cores. So if you don't have more than 8 physical cores, you may not see that option because those options are specifically for those instances. And also, if you don't have ASIO guard activated, if you have more than 8 physical cores, and this is dealing with like hybrid i9 CPUs, if you have more than 8 physical cores and you're still not seeing those particular options, at that point, make sure that ASIO guard is activated because that needs to be activated for the optimizations to be visible. Okay. All right, so we see question. I have an i7 CPU with 64 gigs of RAM. However, I'm always finding MIDI glitches whilst composing, meaning I can't freeze the tracks constantly. Usually check the task manager, and most of the time the memory might be at 70% and the CPU at 40%. How do I solve this issue? So realize that what you're seeing for the audio performance meter inside of Cubase and your computer's system performance, like your CPU meter in your console, in your computer rather, those are showing two different things. So there's not a direct correlation between those. So if you have kind of an older i7 computer, you may have to, depending on, some things that you could do to mitigate the problem is raising your buffer. The lower the buffer, the harder your computer works. The higher the buffer, the more breathing room you have, for the processing. And also, if you have different instruments, realize that if you have, particular instruments that, let's say if we load up a Hallian Sonic instrument, that, some instruments, if you're running kind of 16 instruments in all, in one particular instrument, realize that this one instrument can take, by default, one CPU core. There's different options, like in Hallian Sonic, where we could come over here and switch between multi-core usage. So not a lot of programs, not a lot of instrument plugins do that. So you may have one instrument that's totally killing your CPU, and since that one instrument is only utilizing one CPU core, your audio performance goes down. But you may see a lot of available cores within your particular, like system monitor performance on your computer. So, try adjusting the buffer size, and maybe if you have 16 instruments in one instrument host, maybe spread those out, run 16 different instances, and then, those multiple instances will spread across the CPU cores. So. Okay. Okay, so you see just question. It says, just installed Cubase 13. Not sure I like the changes yet. Some things are bothering me. When I close the program and quit Cubase, the Cubase hub opens. And in Cubase 12, the project window can be separated from the project background and moved around if I wanted to. Cannot seem to do this now. Plus, this has always bothered me. Okay, so it's kind of to be Windows multi-compliant. At that point, what's going to what's going to need to be Windows multi-compliant. The problem is that you could close all the windows, and this is how kind of being Windows multi-window compliant works. You could close all the windows, and then Cubase could still be open as a program. So that's why it will revert to the hub, so that you could quit Cubase, so that there's a window that's open, so that you don't have to open up a project to close the particular window. Okay, and then there's another question here. It says, when I export 32-bit floating point wave file and export the tempo with it, I think I do. When I open a file in Wavelab, I have to configure the tempo in Wavelab. Why will Wavelab not automatically know the tempo in a WAV file if I mix down from Cubase? Sorry if it's too many. So generally, you know, I don't think that the tempo metadata is carried over in Wavelab, but it may not, you know, because Wavelab doesn't respond necessarily to tempo information. So it's not looking for tempo information to play it back at, you know, to sync it to 100 beats versus 120. So you may see it in the metadata, but you may not see it in the actual file itself. Okay, so I just see question, my Yukon devices, S1 and iPad dock aren't working with Cubase 13. So I haven't heard of any issues. I know that some of the people in testing have some of the older Euphonics or Avid controllers. You know, come over and make sure that, you know, one, that you have, you know, the Yukon enabled and that you have the network, you know, the network connection between those. I'll do some more research on it and see. I don't have any of the Yukon controllers to test. So. All right, so we have a question. What is the best way to get existing piece of MIDI, say a bass line or melody, to follow the root note of the chord from the chord track? All right. Okay, so let's say we have just look for a chord track here. I think I may have one. Okay, I'll just create a project here real quick. All right, so just all right, so I'll just come here and let's say I'll just kind of play. All right, so when I put a chord track in, all right, so let's say I want it to come over here. I want this to be C, the chord track, and then let's say I want this to be D. So I played F and G just for reference. So come over here. So now I go to the chords here, and we'll choose to follow the chord track to root notes, and we could synchronize the data with that. So now as we listen, so now we could just have those particular chords follow. So just come over and specify the root notes. And we have a question: is there a way to extract just the root notes from the chord track? So if you wanted if you wanted to get rid of the notes, what you do is if you go to the voicing options here, you could just choose to take the root note out. And then if you have chords that are on particular events, we can just take these particular chords, move them up, and then you could, with the logical editor, we could choose to extract notes. So we'll come here, set up, we can choose to extract to track, and we'll say type is equal to note, pitch, and we'll say and if we come here to context variable is equal to position and chord, and we'll say root note, and then we could apply that and extract it right out. All right, so we see question, is there a way to change the default length and position of chords generated from the chord track, etc.? So as soon as we do that, it's going to be usually placed in like intervals of one measure. So we can see here that we did a couple measures, and as we just dragged the event, so I have my chord track here. So let's say we put in our chords, and if we wanted to take this, we could go to your project menu, and let's get to our chord track, and we'll say chords to MIDI, and that will automatically hold the notes out until the next chord starts. All right. Okay, so we had a question. Any news on when the Cubase 13 Pro crossgrade option will be available? So I think it became available yesterday. So if we come over here, we'll choose Cubase, buy Cubase Pro, and we'll say let's go to updates, and we'll come here, and I think we just go to full versions, competitive crossgrades, so they're now available again. So that and educational versions are now available on the new Steinberg online shop. All right, so a question, can I get the value on automation lane, which usually seems to be between 0 to 100, to reflect the value represented in the plugin? So the plugin generally itself doesn't necessarily represent, what value. So a filter value could be, broken down into different parameters. So with volume, that's going to be universally consistent. But if we want it to actually do it, the other parameters, since the program doesn't necessarily, report those particular parameters when we do it, for like filter sweeps, at that point, it's going to be 0 to 100 for the particular automation. Because that way that's how the computer is interpreting it. It's just sending that automation to the parameter, not necessarily that parameter's information is being sent to Cubase. So this just controls those particular parameters. Okay, so we saw about how to import MediaBay loop content as chord pad patterns. So say we go to the chord pads, I want to jump here to our loops. So the trick is we need to take your MIDI loop, drag it to the project window, and then drag it to the chords. When we just come right here, we'll drag this pattern right here, and that will be how we could do that. So question, is it possible to load the loops from Groove Agent and splice extract modify the MIDI from within the loop? So if we do have a drum loop in Groove Agent, so we'll come here, we could take any loop, drag it to the pad, and now we could slice the sample. It will create the slices, and now we could have this particular pattern pad created, and we could drag that out, and now we could edit the patterns going on for that particular loop. Okay, so we had a question. It says, I want to audio warp audio on between two different tracks. So let's take a look at this real quick. I think it was sent in from Soren. So let me just... Okay, so let's see if we come here about how best to match these particular files. So let's say we'll listen to these quickly.
I thought it would.
All right, so if we wanted to kind of match those up where they're obviously kind of rhythmically wrong, if I was doing this, I would do free warping. So I would just kind of put in my warp markers here for each of the words. And then I would just kind of move these to match. So, and this is probably going to give you kind of the best results to kind of match these up rhythmically. So let me just come here, move this over, and then you could pick your different components. So it's not necessarily going to be kind of like a quantizing, but I would just do kind of warping with that. All right, and we showed this earlier about how to straighten the tempo songs from old records in Cubase 13. So if we wanted to take an older recording that had varying tempos, we'll come here and let's say as we play this track. So if I want to take that, we'll do our tempo detection, analyze, and then we want to select that particular event. We'll go to advanced to detect, and we'll set set definition from tempo. And now what we could do is whatever tempo we type in will be the steady tempo, and that will straighten the tempo out of the audio file. So I take this off. I want it to be exactly 160 beats a minute. So now as we play, this track will now just automatically... All right, so with that, we are at time. I want to go ahead and wrap up. Thank you, everyone, for the great questions. We'll be back on Friday for the next Club Cubase live stream. And we look forward to seeing everyone and answering more of your questions for you. Everyone stay safe and healthy, and we'll see you back on Friday. Goodbye.